Hello everyone, welcome to our online conference. My name is Julia, and on behalf of Cambridge Assessment English and Cambridge University Press, I would like to welcome you to this event today. If you can hear me well, please put a plus in the chat box. I see that people are joining. Hello everyone. Kazakhstan, Moscow, Armenia, Russia, Rostov-on-Don. Hello from Russia. Hello everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this online conference, Innovative Solutions for Higher Education. Thank you for joining us today. Cambridge Assessment English and Cambridge University Press are the global experts on English language teaching, learning, and assessment. As part of a world-leading university ourselves, we understand the challenges in higher education, and we can guide you on all aspects of your English language needs. We offer the most trusted exams and tests for higher education admissions, progression, and graduation, as well as world-leading professional development for you. Cambridge is your trusted partner in English. Over 25,000 higher education institutions, employers, and governments worldwide accept our qualifications and tests. Today, our conference is about challenges that higher education sector faces and solutions that Cambridge provides. So welcome everybody. I can see so many pluses. This is really great. Seems that the sound is quite good. So before we start, I have some tips for you. So we do recommend you to use Google Chrome. If you cannot hear the presenter, see the slides or video, please refresh the webinar page or reconnect to your internet network. Please be an active participant, provide feedback, and ask questions. Just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions in the question box. We use chat box for some general communication. The recording of the event and your certificate of attendance will be emailed to you within a week of the webinar. We only issue certificates to those who have attended our live session. This conference will be recorded and added to our YouTube channel, Cambridge Assessment English Russia. Please follow us on YouTube. Here is the link in the chat. Please copy the link and save it. And there is another announcement for participants from Russia, Armenia, and Belarus. We invite universities from these countries to take part in our contest for higher education institutions. Give your students a boost with LinguaScale from Cambridge. This is an online contest, and what we need from you is to write a motivational letter and explain how LinguaScale, our AI-powered test, will help your students, how they can benefit from this test. So I'm copying the link to the web page. In the chat box, you can see the link to this web page. There, you can find a banner about this contest. Just click on it and read the terms and conditions. Thank you very much. So it's already 3 p.m. in Moscow, and I think that it's time to start. So the first session of our conference is how do you keep fit for purpose when you are over 100 years old? And I'm very happy to introduce our first presenters, Dr. Amy Devine and Dr. Haewon Lee, Senior Research Managers, Cambridge Assessment English. Dear colleagues, I see that Amy and Haewon have already joined. Hello, Haewon.
Hello, hi.
Hi. How are you today?
Of the presentation.
Okay. Hi, Amy. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you very much. So happy to see you today. Thank you for joining. In a second, I will open your slides. Give me just a second. Here it is. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Wonderful. So I hope that the control panel is also there, the arrows to change the slides, and everything is okay. So I wish you good luck with your presentation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. So, hi everyone. This is my colleague Amy, and it's our very pleasure to be invited to this exciting event this afternoon and tell you about the science behind the Cambridge English exams. But before we get into the details, I've got a quick pop quiz for you. So in the next slide, you'll see two numbers here. And do you have any ideas what these numbers might be? And feel free to use the chat function where you can find the upper right corner of the page and just type in your guesses into the chat. And we'd like to make this session, although limited, as interactive as possible. We might be asking you to use this chat function to just type in your thoughts in various times throughout the presentation. Okay, the period of birth might be, yeah, one of us might be over 100 years old. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think some of you know quite well about the history behind the Cambridge English. Okay, so these are basically the years, and the second one might be, I guess, easier to guess. This is basically the year we're currently in. But the first number, which is, as some of you correctly guessed, is the year when the first Cambridge exam was launched. And it was called the Certificate of Proficiency in English back then, and now it's called C2 Proficiency. So if you do a little algebra here, so 2021 minus 1913 is, yeah, it's 108, and that's what we put the phrase in our presentation title today. So what we'd like to tell you about is actually based on this long history that we've built over those years. So today's talk will consist of 3 parts. First, the overarching theory that is deeply rooted in strong test development and practices. And next, we'll introduce the 3 key assessment principles to consider in keeping a test fit for purpose. And lastly, research-based endeavors to update or create new test design by using some innovative technology and to stay stronger. So let's begin with the theoretical orientation. So the socio-cognitive framework. So a socio-cognitive model of language assessment may sounds quite opaque, as some other technical terms might do, but I'm going to talk you through it so that you can have the same shared understanding of what it is. Okay, so if you think of a driving situation, getting a driver's license, for example, here's a question for you. Would you give someone a driving license without taking them on busy roads? So would you give them a driving license if they were only tested on a quiet neighborhood, for example? So the socio-cognitive approach is, very similar to getting a driving license. And here's a good way to think about it. So you can think about some mechanics of driving, and that could be, for example, how to change gears, how to put your seatbelt on, how to steer, and how to turn on the lights, and many more. And all of these are to do with the mechanics of driving. And that's very similar to having language knowledge. And by language knowledge, I mean grammar and vocabulary. So those are the mechanics of language, and those are the building blocks of language, grammar and vocabulary, and very similar to the mechanics of driving. And now, obviously, just knowing how to change gears, for example, is not enough. You need to take drivers in different driving situations. So they need to put those mechanics of driving, that knowledge they have about driving, into different situations. So you would want them to try out in different weather conditions. So for example, on a sunny day, when it rains, for example, and you would also want them to maybe start slowly from a nearly empty car park where there are not really many cars around, and then slowly moving into a busier roads and all the way to the motorway, where it's probably the very busy condition you can find in driving. And there, you're not the only driver anymore, and you have to, assess the situations around you, and you have to constantly monitor what's going on around you, and then decide what kind of right mechanics of driving you need to apply to the certain conditions you just assessed. So that's basically very similar with the language situation. So you have to put your language knowledge into different real life. So here, reading and writing, speaking situations, which involve a real life purpose, which involve, let's say, in speaking, the motorway situation, which is about interaction that I just introduced to you as an example, and also which involve listening for a specific purpose, for example. So that really is what a socio-cognitive approach to language testing is. It's about the cognitive knowledge and the social use of that knowledge. So it's about language competence is seen both as a cognitive trait, in other words, something that's in our brain, and the social skill. It's no longer just, enough to just tap into cognitive skill, but it's important to take that skill and see how learners use it in social situations, which are to do with speaking, writing, listening, and reading. And so good test design should give access both to cognitive skills and to how they are used in a social situation. And now let's move on to the next part and look at the guiding principles that allow a test to stay strong. So over to Amy.
Thank you, Heywan. Just checking that we're on the right slide. Great. So yes, as Heywan said, we're now going to describe the guiding principles we use to ensure our tests are fit for purpose. And these are impact, validity, and reliability. And we're going to explain these using a working example, which we'll return to throughout our presentation. We're going to use the context of an assessment and focus on the B2 first exam, which many of you may be familiar with. And I'm going to start by discussing test impact. So Cambridge Assessment English's mission is to help people learn English and prove their skills to the world. We also aim to provide a path to learning English, step by step. So what does a learner get when they sit the B2 first exam? They receive an exam certificate, a piece of paper with some numbers on it that looks something like this. It tells them that they have their B2 level and that they have passed B2 first. And that's the primary reason why learners sit the exam, is to get this piece of paper. It's what the learner is striving for. And the test certificate and what it represents has to bear the responsibility of those mission statements provided there. In addition, on the back of the certificate are the can-do statements, which tell anybody looking at the certificate that the holder can do these things. It's a summary of the Common European Framework of Reference can-do statements at B2. The learner is then able to use this certificate as evidence that they can do these things in different contexts. In other words, this piece of paper shows that a learner can use English in the real world. They can do real-world tasks, and that's a heavy burden for one piece of paper to carry. So why do people take B2 first? Well, adults may take the exam for work reasons, for example, to improve job prospects, or they may take the test for study or for travel. School-age learners, on the other hand, may take the exam because the school has decided that the exam is the best way of proving that their pupils are learning English. So learners are doing it as part of a school curriculum. And in some cases, they're taking the exam because a Ministry of Education in a country or a region has decided to use B2 first as a way of improving standards of English and as a way of measuring that improvement. So many learners all over the world are taking the exam for different reasons. And the exam has important effects and consequences within the educational systems and within societies more widely. And these are referred to as impact. These effects are referred to as impact. So test takers in particular are affected because the results of the tests are used to make important decisions about them, which can affect their lives. So when investigating impact, the key question we ask is, how does the test affect our stakeholders? And part of our responsibility is to investigate and measure that impact. And Cambridge Assessment English have a team of people conducting impact research across the globe, which looks at the effects of our products and services in different contexts. Impact studies vary in terms of scale and scope, but we aim to collect data from a variety of sources. For example, we might interview decision makers, such as school principals. We might collect data from teachers, learners, and their parents. In other cases, we may gather data from representatives from ministries of education or other bodies responsible for implementing an English language program. We use a range of data collection methods. For example, surveys, focus groups, or one-to-one interviews. But we also use classroom observations. And of course, we also sometimes analyze exam performance. Impact research looks at impact from a range of different angles. And here are some of the areas of interest in terms of washback on learning and teaching. So we're very interested in learners' language progression, as well as their confidence in using English and in sitting the exam. We also focus on classroom practice and any changes to the assessment practices teachers use, but also whether the exams have an impact on identifying students' strengths and weaknesses, and also on teacher motivation. So here are some of the things that schools, teachers, and school decision makers have said about the impact of our exams. This first quote says, "Pupils say, I got a bad mark in listening, what can I do about it?" But students are much more self-aware as to their strengths and weaknesses than they were at the start. So this indicates that the exams are increasing learners' awareness of their strengths and weaknesses, which enables them to improve upon particular skills. The second finding here indicates how the exams have been shown to increase learner motivation, with over 80% of teachers saying that pupils are more motivated as a result of the introduction of the exams. This third quote illustrates the impact of the exams on classroom practice, with the teacher describing the integration of interaction into the lessons to prepare students for the speaking component of an exam. Teachers' perceptions of the exams are also important, and this fourth quote illustrates that teachers valued the fact that the exams were associated with international standards. And this final box of findings here illustrates some of the impacts of the exams on assessment practices, with schools implementing a variety of task types in their tests, a range of texts, and adaptations to increase the authenticity of the interactions in the tests and the practice activities. So in summary, impact focuses on the consequences of the assessment for stakeholders. Assessments impact not only on individuals, as illustrated by the examples just shown focusing on teachers and learners, but also have important impacts on society more widely. And we aim to gather data from a range of sources to evaluate the impact of qualifications on our stakeholders. Okay, so handing over to Haewon again.
All right, thanks, Amy. So now let's return to our example of B2 first test, and this time focusing specifically on the speaking component. So imagine that these are the scores of the learner, and they received a score for speaking of 170. Then how do we know that they are at B2 level? Well, unfortunately, we are unable to directly measure language proficiency, for example, by sticking a probe into the back of someone's head to get the score of 170. So unlike temperature, we cannot measure it directly. We have to take an indirect measurement based on a sample of their language use in the exam. So for B2 first, that's 12 minutes of speaking across 4 test parts. So we therefore have to make some inferences about their broader capability. And so how do we do that? And we start with the theory, like the social cognitive approach that I introduced to you earlier of the presentation. So what's language proficiency? What are the cognitive processes that underlie language ability? And what are the contexts in which language is used? And how can we represent those contexts in our exams? And we also look at the research that has been conducted in this area, and then we validate the test, which is the action of checking that the test is accurate. And the test also has to be practical. That's why it's 12 minutes and not 5 hours. Although a longer speaking test would give us a lot of more information and would make it easier for us to determine that a learner is at the level we say they are, it needs to be something that people can do in a short space of time. So all of these elements come together to ensure that the qualification is fit for purpose. And I'm now going to go into more detail about some of these concepts. And so validity is the second key assessment principle after impact that Amy introduced to us to consider in keeping a test fit for purpose. So validity is the fundamental question when it comes to language assessment, and it basically is what we are testing. So if we think of that driving example I gave you earlier, if you have just tested somebody on a theory test, then obviously the validity there is quite limited because you haven't tested the whole breadth of competence or skills that the driver has to have. So it's just about what we are testing. This is quite a broad concept, and there are books and books written on it, so we're really just scratching the surface here. But just to briefly explain the implication of our understanding of validity, we've taken an example from a speaking assessment. So it's really a narrow example, but the principles you can apply to other skills as well. So here's an example from speaking assessment in the context of validity. And remember, we are talking about validity right now, and I'll ask you a question and think about it as I talk you through it. And like we did at the earlier of the presentation, please feel free to type your thoughts into the chat as we go along with each of the examples. So here's the first example, and this task consists of 6 questions, and you have to read each statement. So it's a reading aloud task. And this is a kind of task that we include in some of our automated speaking tests. So you have to read aloud. So here's a question for you. So does this task test speaking? Okay, feel free to type your thoughts if you like in the chat. Okay, I see some answers coming in. A lot of you said no, but we'll see whether it does test speaking or not later on. Okay, so here's another example. And this is a task which involves describing a picture. And this is an example from our young learner exams. And here you have 2 different pictures that are similar with some differences. And you have to basically describe a picture by saying how different they are. Okay, again, a question for you. Think about this. Does this test speaking, describing a picture task? Okay, some of you said yes, it's a great speaking test. Okay, so I see a lot of yes, then no's for this second one. Okay, all right. And now let me show you another example. Okay, and this is a one which involves discussion with a partner. So you have a question. In this case, the question is it a good idea for students to go on school trips? And then you have a few ideas around it. And then the task is to discuss this with a partner. And this is taken from B2 First for Schools test, which is a pair format. So you have another test taker during the test with you. And again, question for you. Does this test speaking? Okay. Natalia said definitely yes. Okay, I agree with you. Okay. Okay. Yes, it does. All right. Yeah, thanks for your cooperation here. Okay, so far we had reading aloud, describing a picture, and discussion with a partner. And here's a difference between the three, which some of you already commented in the chat box. So reading aloud tests speaking, but only in a very narrow way because it only reproduces language. So there is no generation of ideas. There is no deciding what grammatical and lexical resources to bring into the response. There is mostly pronunciation that is the focus here. So it's really just about reproducing language. And describing a picture does test speaking, of course, as many of you commented on, but in a monologue format. In other words, it's one way, it's unidirectional. Whereas discussion with a partner is about interaction. And these are the fundamental ways to think about speaking assessment, really. So is the test tapping into interaction? Is it tapping into monologue? Or is it just about reproducing a language, such as a reading aloud? And what's important to understand is that in a computer-delivered test, you can only go up to monologue. In other words, that test is limited to only testing monologue speaking, whereas face-to-face test can actually tap into interaction. So these two different test formats tap into different levels of speaking ability. And the key point is that neither test format is whether it's to describe a picture or paired test or an ultimate test that has reading aloud, neither one is good or bad. Neither one is valid or not valid. The question is the test valid for a specific purpose? So fitness for purpose, in fact, becomes a key concept in how we develop exams. And so we can't say that the face-to-face test is valid and the computer-delivered speaking test is not valid, but we can say that the computer-delivered speaking test is valid for specific purposes, and a face-to-face test is valid for other purposes. So fitness for purpose is very much the driving consideration in exams that we put together. So in summary, the Cambridge English exams are developed based on the latest theory, which is the social cognitive approach, and they focus on both cognitive and social aspects of language, and then they are developed in consideration for a specific purpose. So this was a nutshell of the validity, the concept of validity, which is one of the important guiding principles behind our test development. And now, again, over to Amy.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll return to our B2 first example. And in the 2018 to 2019 financial year, this exam was put in front of hundreds of thousands of candidates who sat the exam in 110 countries, over 800 test centres, and over 49 dates. And as such, we needed to create many different versions of the speaking test. The speaking tests were examined by our very large network of examiners. So how do we ensure consistency across these different sessions, different test versions, and examiners? How can we be sure that one candidate receiving a score of 170 has the same abilities as another B2 first candidate receiving that same score? In other words, how can we trust the accuracy of the marks? And this key assessment principle is known as reliability. And to illustrate this idea, I would like to ask you to do a very quick grading task. So what I would like you to do is to grade this apple from 1 to 6. I'm not going to say anything more. I would just like you to grade this apple. Type in your grade into the chat box, please. Okay, I see a few scores coming in. 5, 4, question mark, 3, 4.5, a few 5s and 4s, and 3. Okay, so that we're receiving scores kind of in the upper. Someone describes it looks yummy. That's good. Okay, so I can see there's a range of scores there. That's great. Now I would like you to explain why you gave it that score. So what criteria or what criterion were you using to rate for the basis of the score that you provided? Can people please type into the chat box what criteria you were using to rate the apple? Someone said size, shape, color, how ripe it is, the way it looks, its appearance. Great. Okay, someone says it looks bright and looks yummy. Okay, so yes, so the point that I'm trying to make here is that there's many different criteria, and that's probably why you all gave it slightly different ratings. So many of you suggested color, shape, size, and if you were able to hold that apple and rate it in real life, you might be able to actually rate it on weight, you might be able to taste it, so you could rate it on its taste or its juiciness. So the point I'm trying to make is there's many different criteria to consider when you are rating something as straightforward as an apple. But without consistent criteria for rating, you provided different scores as you were rating it on different things. And when it comes to the assessment of speaking performance, the criteria become considerably more complex. It's therefore very important to use scales that are well researched. And here I present the basis for the assessment scales that B2 First examiners use, which covers grammar and vocabulary, discourse management, pronunciation, and interactive communication. And these assessment criteria reflect the fact that speaking is a broad and multifaceted construct, and it includes important aspects of communicative competence, as well as linguistic features of spoken language. And these speaking criteria have been informed by research investigating the structure and flow of naturally occurring language, which has enabled us to refine those definitions of discourse management and interactive communication. However, it's not just the scales that we use that ensure the reliability of our tests. We also need to ensure that our examiners are appropriately trained to use the assessment scales consistently. And new examiners go through a training process where they become familiar with the global issues underlying the speaking tests, the examiner roles, test format, and the function of the interlocutor frames. They then have to be certified and thereafter go through a rigorous yearly standardization process, which focuses on the assessment process and includes a marks collection exercise. So in summary, the reliability is about using research-based assessment scales and using a network of trained examiners that are then monitored thereafter to ensure quality. Now I'm aware we're running out of time, so I'm just going to very quickly go through some current trends and innovations that we are looking into, because as Hye-won said earlier, it's part of our validation process involves revisiting the tests and continually improving them, but we also have to monitor current trends and developments to ensure our tests and services remain fit for purpose. So some of the things we have been looking at include online delivery of exams, where we've been looking at the speaking tests and the impact of a remote test format on stakeholders such as test takers and examiners. We've also been looking into remote proctoring, which is another term for online exam invigilation. And the aim of this is to reduce cheating, to help identify test takers, and to protect the security of our tests. We have also started developing what we call digital first exams, which is where we, rather than starting by looking at the paper-based exam and figuring out how to tweak that to put it in a digital format, we start designing the tasks with the digital formats always in mind. We have also started developing, we've also started looking into automated assessment, which is receiving a lot of attention. This is how computers can complement the work of human assessors to provide accurate evaluations of language and help diagnose areas for improvement. Personalized assessment is another area we're exploring, and this is tailoring assessment tasks and items based on a learner's response to previous questions. And doing so, we can build up the learner's profile over time. We have also been experimenting with games-based assessment, which is where you integrate language tasks into a game environment. And doing so can increase learners' engagement with the activities, making them less aware of and less anxious about the assessment process. We have also been exploring how we can design online tasks that generate actionable feedback on specific skills or language areas. And finally, Cambridge English has been looking at ways in which we can bring all of these elements together into an ecosystem of learning, an environment where language learning and assessment materials and feedback are linked in order to make learning and teaching more efficient. So that brings us to the end of our presentation today. We covered our theoretical approach, the socio-cognitive approach to language assessment, and we discussed the guiding principles of impact, validity, and reliability, as well as the research-based assessment and innovation. Many thanks for your attention. If you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A and we will try to address them now. Someone is asking about the recording. Yes, there'll be a recording later. What resources can you advise to prepare for the use of English part? I don't know precisely which test, but I think that we have plenty of resources available on the Cambridge English website. So whichever exam you're talking about, I would suggest looking specifically at that page, and under preparation, there should be a lot of preparation materials, and also under the teachers section of the Cambridge English website, there's a lot of materials there. Receiving a lot of thank yous. That's great, you're very welcome. Any other questions? Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I mean, if you think of something later, here you can see our email addresses, so please feel free to write us an email if you have any other thoughts that come to mind or queries that you would like us to follow up on.
Dear colleagues, Amy, Hey-won, thank you very much for this presentation, for this session. That was really great to see how over a century and millions of candidates later, the exams are still going strong and remain fit for purpose. Thank you very much for sharing with us this science behind the test. This is really, really useful, and I think that was the best introduction of our conference, the first plenary session. Thank you very much for joining us today. And there was a question about the recording. So, dear colleagues, this webinar is recorded, and the recording will be added to our YouTube channel, Cambridge Assessment English Russia. So the link is in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and bye all.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. So, I'm happy to introduce the next presenter, Claire Barnes, and Claire is a teacher trainer, CELTA trainer, Cambridge Assessment English presenter. She has CELTA and Delta qualifications, and Claire is currently based in Germany. Her session is about developing and assessing academic writing skills for high levels. So Claire, hi, can you hear me? Please start webcasting. Hello.
Yeah, I've just noticed that my hair's standing up rather oddly, but never mind, such is life.
Thank you for joining us today. Very nice to see you. Unfortunately, I'm without my camera, so sorry for this, but well, we are extremely happy for your time. Thank you for joining. So I've just uploaded your slides. Can you see? Yes? Okay.
Yes, I can. I'm just figuring out which one I need to hit, which key I need to hit to move them. That one. Okay, cool. Yay. Sorry.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I think I'd remember. Yes, sorry. Have you done? Shall I start?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Julia, for that warm welcome. And hello, everybody. Thank you, Natalie. That's very kind of you to say that, but I'm a little disturbed by this thing sticking up, but never mind. We will carry on as if, yeah? Okay, so as you know, I like, or some of you will know, I do like a more interactive webinar, even if I can't see you. So we've got the chat box, which I'm going to ask you to use to answer silly questions as we go along. And also, if you have any, I'm not going to say serious questions, if you have any content questions that we cannot deal with in this session, then please put them into the question box at the top of your screen. Yeah, you're seeing it from a long way away. And that's probably a good thing, everybody. So anyway, pressing on because we're already late. Talking about developing assessing academic writing skills. Well, of course, this is a huge subject, you know. So we could talk for several days, or we could focus a little bit. So I've tried to focus for us. And I'd like you in the chat box now, please, to think about genres in academic writing. So what kind of things would you expect to have to write in an academic context? Okay. All right. Okay, fine. Excellent. Lots of ideas coming in the chat box here. Oh, a proposal, an application letter. Maybe. Okay. Yeah, a review. Okay, someone's saving time by writing everything possible. Abstracts and thesis. Yeah. Quite agree in many ways. Cool. Narration. That's an interesting thought. Narration as in a voiceover for some kind of video, I assume you're talking about. A note, not sure how academic notes would be, but there we go. These are the things that I came up with and put on this colorful slide. That yellow is not very clear, is it? I should have changed the yellow into black. I rather thought I had, never mind. Okay, so yeah, all of these things and more, basically, you are likely to find. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to talk about all of these things today, so we are actually going to talk about writing an essay. And I have something for you to read. And as you read it, perhaps you'd be able to tell me what exactly the content of this is referring to. Okay, so there we go. Have a little bit read. And when you've had your little bit read, in the chat box, it is about an essay, yes. In the chat box, thoughts, as in, there's lots of fancy words in there, but what do the fancy words actually refer to? Yeah, I think an essay personally is one of the least creative ways that academia has come up with in order to prove that somebody has been listening to the professor or has read the reading list and is basically in a position to tell everyone what they've read. There's got to be an easy way and a better way of doing that. But still, everyone insists on the essay, so let's hang in there. Yeah, somebody's put it, is it possible to write, okay, so there we go. Have a look at the highlighted colors, and then in the chat box, perhaps you care to note what these colored parts refer to, or where you might read this kind of phrasing. An interesting question from Ina there about some little known or invented book for if you can't remember everything. Well, yeah, essentially, if you're thinking about a review there, you know, then yeah, I don't think the people in Cambridge are actually going to go out and search for your book and read it just to see what you've written about it. So yeah, it's all about how you've worded the review rather than anything else. Yeah, key points, assessment criteria. Yay, assessment criteria, indeed. So, and the purple, if we look at the purple, which of the criteria does that refer to? Okay, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. Content. Yeah, okay, so, all things that you might read in the criterion for content, salient, relevant salient issues, and to be able to support an argument, obviously, with subsidiary points, and that's where a lot of people fall down, frankly. Okay, what about the turquoise? Yeah, organization. Yeah, exactly. Organization, basically. Yeah. Absolutely. And what about the yellow? What about the yellow? Such a pretty color, don't we think? Communicative achievement. Thank you there, Svetlana. Exactly. Got in just ahead of several thousand other people. Yeah, that's this slightly challenging criterion about communicative achievement. But basically, it's about the genre, it's about register, and it's about holding the target reader's attention in terms of, okay, if I read a piece, this essay, do I immediately want to tear it up? Not a good thing. Or am I confused because somebody has said this is going to be an essay, but actually it reads more like you know, a review, then that's where we begin to have problems with it. Complex ideas, or communicating straightforward and complex ideas, also part of the assessment criteria for communicative achievement. As in, it's all very well to have the idea, but if we can't explain it adequately, then we're not really any further forward, are we? And the green is obviously, what is the green? Exactly. Yeah, it's language, so it's grammar and vocabulary use of and range of, indeed. That's the teacher's favorite, isn't it? I think a lot of teachers sort of start with language and then they move on to the others, whereas in many cases, actually, we have to start with content, don't we? Really and truly. Okay, right. Let me slightly move on here. I've got a bit of a table for you. Okay, so it's all very well to have these criteria, right? But we've and these things that you can see in the table right now are all these phrases, these sentences are all taken from the assessment criteria, writing assessment criteria for B2 and C1. My question to you is, what does that mean? If I'm reading an essay and I'm trying to assess it, what exactly am I looking for? That would be the question. So, for example, if we say content is relevant to task, what might be the key features? What would I expect to see in an essay? Chat box has gone very, very quiet there. Okay, right. Addresses the problems, always a good thing. Okay. Exactly. Yes, but what does fully informed mean? Do you know? Okay, so a point of view is coming in. Exactly. So opinions for and against whatever the question is. With examples. Don't forget the examples. It's not good enough to say, well, I think all this talk about protecting the environment is nonsense. Certainly an opinion, but it doesn't give me anything else to work with. There's no examples, there's no expansion of the topic, is there? Okay, exactly. So we're thinking essentially here of concrete examples, a concrete expansion, okay, of the point. It's not about being right or wrong, it's about actually having something to say and saying it, isn't it? Okay, I'd like you to look at the others. You see, I've numbered these criteria for you because I have moments of helpfulness. And I'd like you to wander your way through or to choose one of the criteria. And in the chat box, can you write the number of the criterion and then what you think the key feature might be? Yeah, so for example, if we're talking about 1, you might say 1, opinions for and against, examples, and so on and so forth. What about the rest of them? Can you choose one of these criteria and just type what you think? Some amazing names coming up here. Yeah, okay. And what about number 1, number 2, number 3? What is the key feature of it? So somebody said earlier, number 5, something about that. Okay, thank you there. Okay, good point. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, not just 3, but as a couple of people have suggested, the fact that it would include organization, exactly. Good, wonderful. Yeah, that's a good point there, Ekaterina, for number 1. Yes, yeah, sticking to the point. Guess who's the least good at sticking to the point? Give you a clue, it's not students. Oh, that's an interesting one for number 4. Yeah, good. Okay, yeah. 3, overall progression throughout the text. What kind of progression are we talking about there, Julia? Not really quite understand how, unless you mean by progression that the topic is developed, then that would also, yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah, we've got some interesting ideas coming out there. Okay. Separate paragraphs. Nice idea. Yeah. Okay. Although separate paragraphs are not cohesive devices, but yeah. I suppose paragraphing per se might be. 3 is also about the word count. Is it really? Clearly elaborated. Yeah, okay. And think about also what kind of language you might expect there. Okay. Yeah, Anna's written 3, 7, and 1. So I'm thinking maybe that's what you think are the most important. I'm not quite sure. Okay. Let's move on to C. Okay. So yeah, as we said, content. It's things that you would expect to find if content is relevant. So that is opinions for and against the topic. For example, examples of why you've said what you have said. Okay, so to expand on points. And it's no good just saying, I disagree with everything, without saying, well, I disagree with everything. And here is why. Okay, yeah. Okay, messages are communicated to the target reader. And here we're looking at language like, okay, functional language for highlighting main points, for example. Key issue here is, okay, things like, and another way of saying that would be, and so on and so forth. So clear markers through the essay so that we can clearly see what are the main points, what are the examples and the justifications. Yes. Okay, you can see the number 3, as a number of you have already suggested. Yeah, introduction, main body, conclusion. You think it was simple, but having read as many essays as I have, it's, you know, you have the introduction actually doesn't need to be very long. And I found just last year in Point of Fact, I was teaching C1 advanced to teenagers, and they were wholly incapable of putting together an introductory paragraph that actually said anything. And when I challenged them on the subject, we went through the whole thing and we did lots and lots of work on it and so on and so forth. They got better. And then I said, why can't you do this? Why couldn't you do this before? And they were like, no, school teachers don't tell us how to. Interesting point. Interesting point. But yeah, introduction short, main body longer, in paragraphs, a conclusion also needs to be quite short. Somebody talked about a word count. Seriously? Are we still talking about the word count? Cambridge people are really going to have time to sit down and count the number of words? Not necessarily, yeah. It's not about counting words, it's about addressing the content. It's about making sure that whatever you've written actually does fulfill the content task. But word counts, no. Journalists have word counts when they have to submit articles, but no, when you're writing exams for Cambridge or other people, then not necessarily. Okay, yeah, cohesive devices. Exactly, Galina, exactly, absolutely, good point, well made. Yeah, cohesive devices, for example, you'd expect things like despite and whereas and similarly and so on and so forth. So these cohesive devices that help us to get through the text, to organize what we're actually trying to say, rather than just going idea, idea, example, idea, example, because that's, you know, it's quite difficult, isn't it? So we use these cohesive devices, and English has so many. Exactly. So range of lexis used accurately. So you'd, for example, expect nominalization and collocations and all of these kind of things. Interesting things like this fronting, as in the way to achieve that is to do this and this and this. Yeah, or one alternative to this is to do da 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 da. Yeah, I think for many of the younger students, certainly, it seems to be quite difficult to catch on to the idea that you do have to not just say, you know, I like ice cream. I like vanilla ice cream. My mother doesn't like vanilla ice cream, because that's very, very bare, isn't it? Yeah, and so I think that's one of the more difficult things for our teenagers in particular, to actually dress that up and to make it sound a little bit better, as in, okay, my favorite ice cream would be vanilla ice cream, because you know, it's creamy and so on and so forth. On the other hand, my mother doesn't like da 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 da. Okay, right, yeah, and of course everyone's favorite grammar. Okay, simple and complex, used accurately, preferably, so things as it suggests on the slide. Yeah. Can I make the point, however, and it's going to hurt, I'm sorry, but I'd like to make a point here. Relative clauses, fine. Don't have a problem with relative clauses. Participle clauses. Teachers, more than one participle clause in a 200 to 300 word essay? Really? Really? Does sound a little bit unnatural sometimes. Yeah, so participle clauses, yes, but please don't encourage your students to begin every single sentence with a participle clause. And also, I've done in my time a fair bit of teaching, preparing, tutoring, whatever you care to call it, teachers for C1 Advanced and C2 Proficiency. And the most difficult thing is to get those teachers off their I must impress. I must not impress. I must stick to the content and occasionally throw in something that sounds natural. Okay. So let's lay off the participle clauses. Yeah, Olga, it is interesting, isn't it? And I wonder why that is. Perhaps, as my students last year indicated, perhaps not enough time is spent even in Russian academic writing at school. I have no idea. Perhaps it's not required. Perhaps Russian academic writing is different. Not a notion. Not impress, but express. Thank you, Galina. Galina, you're doing well, actually putting succinctly and concisely what I'm trying to say. Well done. And that's a very interesting question. Basically, if it doesn't sound natural, then it probably isn't going to be natural. That's what it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And with Lexis also, lexical chunks. I think one of the bigger problems also with academic writing is that many students, and to an extent some of the teachers, still want to include idioms, idiomatic phraseology. Seriously, in academic writing. Academic writing is quite formal, yes? It varies from semi-ish to very formal. And it doesn't feature idiomatic language. You know, collocations, yes. Fixed phrases, yes. Idioms, yeah. You know, because again, idioms are not particularly formal, are they? Most of the time, when native speakers talk to each other and they're using idiomatic language, somebody at some point has to say, "Excuse me, didn't get that. What does that mean?" Because idiomatic language is quite personal and quite local. Sticking to the point is the most difficult thing about the whole thing, Tatiana. You are absolutely correct in that. Punctuation is another thing that we do have to think about, obviously, because, well, you know, whoops, keeping an eye on the time, running out of it. Punctuation is a useful thing. Commas in English, when in doubt, leave them out, please, 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 please. Use the semicolon, so much more helpful. Now, moving on, so of course, when you announce to your students, okay, today we're going to write an essay, how many of you do that? How many of you get them to write in class? I'll let that question just hang there. But what is the usual response? The usual response is, I don't know what to do, I can't do this. Yeah. Very hard to engage them in this activity. Well, yes, there is that. Yeah. Okay, Anna, they hate it, fine. Do they hate it because you hate it? How about that for a provocative question? Yeah, I do a lot of teacher training, and yeah, it is absolutely. I do a lot of teacher training, and one of the things that we do on CELTA, for example, is we insist that our trainees actually run writing lessons. And when we have that particular input session on CELTA, a lot of the practicing teachers go, really? You want them to write during the lesson? Yeah, we do. We do need to see that. Because, okay, you say that it's difficult to motivate them to write at all, which is true. Writing at home, I mean, seriously, writing at home on your own, is that not even less motivating than writing in the classroom? I think there are ways and means of including these things in the classroom, yeah? Okay. They do like, exactly, yeah. I've been doing a lot of writing online, and I find Google Docs very helpful because you give them each a different page on the same Google Doc, or you put them together in pairs or threesomes and give them a page on a Google Doc, and you can see what's happening. And they can also check with each other as well, which is quite helpful. So anyway, we need to focus to help our students, don't we? And then we need to think about what kind of linguistic functions we want them to focus on. And you can see a list of them on the screen in front of you right now. Yeah, that's a good point there, Anna. You're physically there. Online, you're also virtually there, which is quite useful. And you can provide instant support and also encourage them to consider, okay, you've just written this. Why have you just written this? Yeah, so you can think about that. Okay, right. So if we take this idea about agree and disagree just a little bit further, you can also then think about eliciting phrases for strongly agree and so on and so forth. So if we think celebrities earn too much money, people, yeah, do you strongly agree, strongly disagree? Agree, disagree, or just go, nah. Yeah. Can somebody in the chat box strongly agree and someone strongly disagree? What phrases would you use to do that? Would you just say, I strongly agree? Because that's quite, you know, unexciting, isn't it? Yes. So we've got to try and elicit phrases that we can use to strongly agree. Yeah, in my opinion, it is disgraceful the amount of money that celebrities earn these days for doing absolutely nothing on TV, for example. Yeah. Or if you go the other way, no, you know, people do. I think or it is my considered opinion that given that the celebrity status of most of our so-called celebrities is about 5 minutes on primetime TV, then perhaps they are not earning too much money, and so on and so on. Exactly. Yeah, all kinds of things there. Okay. Does anyone use Padlet? To generate ideas, to start off with, I find Padlet is quite useful. And you can also use Padlet to generate specific types of sentences. In this particular Padlet, you can see on green, in the green in the middle there, that was my starting point. And I insisted that whatever the students wrote, or the people wrote, some of you might have been even part of it, insisted that both sides of the argument were mentioned in one sentence, because I think that's also very important that people understand and learn how to do that. So having practiced it, that's what happens, And Padlet is quite useful because it can be anonymous. They keep saying, oh yes, you keep having to pay, but I just delete everything and start again, and it works. And you can do that regularly. And the great thing about Padlet is that you can use it on a mobile phone as well, and you can use it in a physical classroom as well as online. What do I think of free writing preliminary to writing? Yeah, that's one way of doing Asya. Absolutely. There is a speed writing technique, which a lot of people use. I'm keeping an eye on my WhatsApp just in case Julia is saying, stop it. The speed writing technique is, okay, here's your topic. Now just write and 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 write until I tell you to stop writing. And you encourage people at that point to not worry about the language, to not worry about editing. If they can't think of a particular word or phrase in English, well, let them write it down in Russian or whatever other language you're using, to overcome the temporary difficulty, to allow the ideas to flow. Okay, it is quite a common technique. It does mean that you need to have relatively long lessons, or you have to come back to what they've written at a later point in time. Yeah, but yeah, it's quite a common thing. Yeah. Okay, seriously running out of every time here. Checklists always helpful. But I'm going to move on here. Yeah, overcoming writer's block, absolutely. And it can be quite difficult. It can be quite difficult. Something to do again and again and again, however. Because doing it once, this is a great thing about writing, doing everything once is not going to help. Because they need to be able to do it again and again and again and again and again, so that in an exam situation, bang, it's there. But also, so that in a real academic context, and some of the students will be studying in English rather than in whatever their local language is, then, to allow them to be able to do that, to be able to write this academic whatever, without actually having to stop and worry about how. Okay, I am nearly finished, Julia, I promise. Just wanted to mention some free online resources that you will find if you go to CambridgeEnglish.org, learning English. Yeah, remember, there's the teaching side and there's the learning side. All kinds of free online resources to help you and your students there. And also there's always this Write and Improve, which I believe you have to start paying for after a certain point, but certainly you can generally input one piece of writing for free, and it does give you feedback. I don't see why not, Daria. IELTS, there is if you look actually on the Cambridge English site, the general writing stuff for the learners will help everybody. There's also IELTS material on the teacher's website if you look for it. Yeah, as well. Okay. I'm done. Thank you very much for listening to me. I do hope it hasn't been too rushed. Sorry if it has. Thank you. Julia, over to you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you very much for this session. That was really useful and very interactive. Thank you for all this communication with our participants. I've noticed so many messages in the chat box, and now I see so many thank yous. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for this webinar. That was really great. So I think that it's time to move to the next presentation. And I would like to welcome Andrei Rajkovsky, an experienced teacher and educational consultant. Andrei holds an MA degree in linguistics, CELTA qualification, and professional diploma in management from the Open University. Andrei works as a freelance trainer with Cambridge University Press and Cambridge Assessment English. So hello.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well.
Thank you very much for joining us today. So I see that the sound of the video is really great. So in just in a second, I will open your presentation. This one.
Yeah.
So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leah. All right. So I promise not to overextend, so just stick with me, please. If you need a break, then it's coming in 30 minutes as promised. All right, so we're going to talk about going beyond the boundaries, because sometimes in the exam preparation classroom, we tend to stick to exam preparation proper too much, and then real life is left out or left behind. So I'm going to make a point here that we can do both, prepare our learners for exams and real life, especially at higher levels such as C1, for example, when the boundaries between real life use and exam preparation are not as clear as at lower levels, where you practically use English for communication occasionally, but more for work, for studies, or other purposes, unless you travel, of course. But when you travel, you don't have many occasions to use language unless you go to an English-speaking country and you make a point of meeting people and using language as much as you can, right? So what's in the mix? What does it take to actually mix real life and exam preparation? First of all, we have to care about learners' interests and expectations. We have to think about the learner in the classroom. It's their motivation that matters here. We also care about exam preparation, because this is what our students usually come for and join our classes for, hoping that we have the magic potion or the recipe to turn them into wonderful exam takers. But we also need to try and push our learners and help them to push themselves further. So it's not only what you need to know for the exam, it's a lot more that is beyond the current level that you might want to explore whenever you can. So we're going to, first of all, talk about connecting to our learners' interests and expectations. And I'd like to quote John Lennon here. Surprise, surprise. Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. So inevitably, in exam preparation classrooms, we will also be thinking about life outside, and learners will be bringing their own experiences to the classroom, sharing them if encouraged, motivated to talk about ideas that matter to them, not just the ideas that follow the topics prescribed for a certain exam. So we might throw in something like this. Even a course book for exam takers can include pages like this about the real world. So learners also explore the world through their exam preparation course, and they learn about things that might be useful in the near future when they travel to an English-speaking country, for example. But to make this sound and look more authentic, we might also include listening and videos, so we can bring these authentic language examples to life through video and listening tasks, especially video, because we know that in their own time, our learners spend a lot of time online, browsing YouTube and other favorite channels full of videos that reflect their interests of today. So when we include videos in our teaching and learning materials, they also appreciate that, because we should also consider the fact that learners today are a lot more visual than before. So although we teachers might have been educated in an environment where text-heavy learning was predominant, our learners today learn a lot more through images, video, and other things like that. So text does matter, because they're going to face that in the exam papers, but for input, video is great because it also encourages learners to pay attention more. All right, and then life is also about competencies. So when you think about language learning and examination training, then it's probably more about the 4 skills and the language. But when you think about preparing for life, these can be combined with competencies. So we've developed a competencies framework that can help learners connect what they learn to real life use, and life competencies that they're going to use far beyond our classroom. So a framework looks like this. There are 6 key competencies, and then each of them is translated into a set of abilities that learners should be able to show in order, and develop, of course, in order to achieve a certain competency. So if you look at what a competency is, then you might think about this as a combination of certain knowledge, skill, and attitudes. But I'd like to ask you a question, and I'll give you some time to type your definitions in the chat box now. How would you define knowledge, skill, and attitudes? If a competency is a combination of the 3, what does each of them mean to you? And then we'll compare it to the answers that I've prepared on the next slide. Okay? So how would you define knowledge, skill, and attitudes? Whichever you like. Okay, so skill is the ability to do something, all right? information stored in your memory, all right, or your head. What you know, yeah, all right. Knowledge is what you gain, all right. Something you can do, it's a skill, all right. Okay. Skill is what you can do, yeah. Knowledge is something learned. 3 is how you refer to it, okay. Yeah. Knowledge is awareness of something, yeah, okay. All right. How you feel about it, yeah. Okay. So here it comes. Knowledge is something that you need to know to do something well. Knowledge that doesn't lead to any practical use is of little use. So if we think about this, well, both in our classroom and in our daily lives, what you know should serve a purpose. It should enable you to do something well or better, all right? Then when you start doing something, you achieve a certain degree of mastery of fluency. And that is something that you gain from practice, and that is a skill. So when you say you can do this, you've already achieved a certain degree of fluency in the skill. And finally, attitudes, the mindset. You need to develop the knowledge and skills necessary to build a competency. All right. So basically, the combination of the 3 is what we call a competency in this framework. Right. And then when it comes to exam preparation, what do? We can first of all expose learners to each and every possible exam question type that they're going to see on the day of the exam. And this will just give them more confidence. And the more familiar they are with the task and test types, the better they feel on the day of the real exam. Then it's good to know what's in the paper and in each part of the paper, but it's also important to work with students' strategies for that they can use to tackle each question and each part of each paper here. So in order to pass the exam more successfully within the time frame that is allocated for each paper, learners also need to work on their strategies. How to, rather than just what. All right. So if the first thing here on this list is more about what's in there, what's in the exam, then strategies are more about how to do this to achieve better results within the time available. And of course, the more you practice, the better. So as many opportunities for practice as possible. But working on skills and building your knowledge and confidence within each part of each paper doesn't mean that you have to jump straight into a certain part of the exam to start working on the exam type questions that you might need to know. All right, you can start further away from this, for example, with a lead-in task that is still building your skills towards the exam, but in a more gentle manner. And then when the time comes, we can look at every single part of a certain paper and look at the strategies that our learners need to be able to deal with them more successfully and achieve more. All right, what can we possibly do? I've recently read a paper about facts and tips boxes, and there's a whole scientific paper written about scaffolding and helping learners with just a little bit of advice here and there that is just as helpful as giving them practice in something. So we can just add those little boxes next to the tasks that we're working on. And then another thing is we have to think about both the exam papers and the structure of the exam, but we also need to make sure that learners have the language to be able to fulfill the tasks that they're required. So we have to make sure that we also work on and build learners' knowledge and awareness of certain grammar and vocabulary. But we can do this in many ways. We can just give learners practice in the classroom, but what we have here as an example, if you look at those QR codes that are included, learners can scan them in their own time, and they can learn this grammar point through a little video that explains the point to them. So we have a sort of a flipped classroom situation here. Before learners come to our class, they are aware of this grammar point, and they are ready to practice that with their classmates or with the teacher. Okay, so this is what it looks like. You just have you scan it with your mobile phone, and then you watch a little video, and then you work through the grammar either on your own or with your group mates and the teacher. But once we've done all the necessary things towards the exam, how do we actually find the time and energy and motivation to do more, to go further beyond the current level that we are preparing for, or we've almost achieved, and we're about to sit an exam at a certain level? So then this would be handy. We should probably, with any kind of class, we need to start with the question why rather than how and what. We know that the what will be there anyway. The content and the structure of the course is there for our learners. We've built it for them. Ideally, we've built it around their current needs. We probably do some diagnostic testing beforehand. Then we tailor the course to the needs of a particular group. That's what we are good at doing. But if you really think about motivation, why the learners are doing this, it's probably a lot more useful to start our course with this question in the middle, in the center of this circle. So why do you do what you do? What's the purpose? It's not just what exam are you preparing for, but why are you preparing for this exam at all? Sometimes the answer is simple, and it could be because I need it, because the university requires a certain qualification. I need to prove my level to an employer, to a school. I need to pass it to prove myself that I can do it. So there are many reasons why we learn languages and other things in life. And then when you're clear about your aims, then you're ready to talk about strategies. It's how you're going to do this. And this is when we as teachers step in with our plans, and we show the roadmap of the journey that we're about to take with our learners. And we introduce them to the process that we're going to take them through, hopefully to get get where they should be at in some time, be it real life or exams. And then finally, we talk about the content. And the content, this can be tricky, and this is why publishers keep writing new books and publishing new course books for general language classes and exam preparation classes. Life is changing, and you have to either update the materials you already have in a course book. If it's a successful one, then you might have another updated version or another edition of the same book. But it's also something that life requires us to do. We have to update our own materials that we prepare for our courses, because we also include authentic materials, hoping that they will be closer to the world today as we see it. So sometimes we leave this challenge to the author of the course book and say, okay, well, it's your task to find out what learners at this level of this age care about, and make sure you include this content in the course. But sometimes we just find something useful on our way, especially in C1 or higher level preparation classes. We sometimes just come across something browsing for whatever interests us, and we say, oh, hey, this is a great video, I'm going to use this in class. So what is something that we think about all the time as teachers in terms of relevance to our learners' needs and the world, also the world that they see, the world that we live in. And then when it comes to exam preparation, it's actually more about how we get there in less time and with better results if possible. All right, so how can we also include some extra language that is beyond the point that we're preparing for? Well, we can just provide a space for students to practice their language at the next level. It can be part of their work in class. It can be something that they do on their own. But the important thing here is to actually challenge our learners to want to go beyond that exam level, to want to be curious about the language they're learning, to be curious about the world and explore it through the language that they're learning. So it can be as easy as that. While preparing for a certain paper or skill, you can also do some extra language work at a level which is higher than the one that you're working on at the moment. So we can just add a few tasks here and there to show the learners what's in there for them beyond the current level and where else they can go when they've passed this exam. So it makes them curious, and it challenges them, because some of these structures and vocabulary may not be as easy for them as the ones included in the core part of the book. But they know what's in there for them after that. So they might want to just explore more. And we also need to give learners more flexibility to practice in their own time. So you know that modern course books always have something like reference sections at the back, but it's also good to include practice, not just reference. So they can if we don't have enough time to cover this in our course, then learners can always do more when they feel they need it, or we can refer them to a certain section in the book at the back, as we say, to practice more if we identify that as a need of a certain learner. And then they can also do some practice online, and our colleagues today are going to talk you through our resources and the test bank. So I'll just go through this very quickly. So for this particular course, Open World, you have a a whole range of additional materials online. So when they log in, they can do this on their computer or their mobile. As you see, it's also easy to use on their mobiles. So what's there on top of what we have in the book is extra videos. They can also use the ebook instead of the paper one, especially when they're on the move. Teachers have the resources there, and the Presentation Plus software that enables us to use the book in the classroom with the interactive whiteboards or just a multimedia projector. Then there's extra practice, test generator, so you can quickly generate the test to check something on the go. And most importantly, there's a tested train facility that is accessible through the mobile phone as well. So when you open that, it's neat and it's well laid out and clear, so learners can comfortably use it even as they're going to their class, on their way, in their bed, wherever they like. So they can use any occasion and any space to do more learning on their own. And even tests can be taken on their mobile phone like this. So it's all it's all there for them and very easily accessible, and can be used on a variety of platforms. And well, so because my colleagues are going to talk about this, I'm going to skip this because there's something else I want to show you here. I just want to remind you of the English Profile project. And you see the links to the two websites. One is the vocabulary database, and the other one is the grammar profile. And well, I've particularly used as you see here, I ticked the boxes for C1 and C2 here to show you how many different items you can find as you browse for a certain level. So there are thousands of items of vocabulary that are relevant to the level. And well, I'd like to encourage you to actually refer to this free database developed by the University of Cambridge and a lot of other collaborators. So it's a wonderful project that's being developed and it's still work in progress at some point, where we have language filtered and language stored, the way learners use it. The wonderful, the best thing about this database is that all the examples of language here are learner generated. So basically, before an item appears either on the vocabulary list or on the grammar list, it has to be found in a paper, in a past paper that well, a certain candidate in a certain country wrote. So basically, we use learner-generated language. We process that for frequent vocabulary that they can use accurately and consistently at each level of the Cambridge exams. And then this is verified against the native speaker corpus to make sure that learners use the words accurately and the meaning is still the same as native speakers would use it. And then this is illustrated with two types of examples. There can be dictionary examples and can be learner examples. So next to the example that you find here, if you just explore one of the items here, you'll find learner examples. They can be uncorrected and then corrected. And then you can also find a standard dictionary example illustrating this particular structure or vocabulary item. So If you're in doubt, or if your learners are in doubt, what kind of language they need for a certain level, I'd certainly advise you to use this as often as you can. And then another good thing about this database is that when you've filtered through a certain level, you can store it on your computer. You can download it as an Excel file, so you can take it with you and use it later on, not necessarily here and now online as you access it. So this is just something where you can push yourselves further and push your learners further as well. All right. So, well, we've got 2 minutes to talk about your questions. So if you have any, please type them in the chat box, and I'll try to go through at least a few of them before I hand it over to Julian and then to the next speaker. Yeah. And well, you can always refer back to my slides, because the organizers are going to share them with you. Thank you. All right, let's just wait for a minute or two in case there's any question. Thank you. All right, thank you. Okay, then over to you, Julia.
Thank you very much, Andrei, for this session, for this webinar. It was really great to explore how engaging topics, real-world communication, validated exam content can help learners reach their goals, be it learning English for communication in the open world or success in exams. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you will join our future events. Thank you. So I'm really happy to introduce our next presenter, and we are moving to the next topic, to the next session of our conference, Encouraging Self-Study at B2 First and C1 Advanced with the latest learning materials from Cambridge Exams Publishing. John McNeil, experienced teacher, self-qualified teacher, currently business development manager, Cambridge Exams Publishing, Europe and North Africa. Since 2008, John has worked for Cambridge University Press in several business development roles and currently focuses on Cambridge Exams Publishing across Europe and North Africa. Hello, John. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm uploading your presentation, so here it is.
Thank you very much indeed. Hi, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I'm John, and I'm here today to talk to you about some of our learning resources at B2 and C1. I'm going to not go into too much detail on the actual physical resources, the materials. I'll go into a little bit more details on Test and Train and the other digital resources that accompany them. Anyway, I'm John, and I think it's maybe more important for you to know who is closer to you in Russia and who can help you with your questions over time. So I'm putting up the contact details for Angela in the sort of Moscow region, who focuses on primary and secondary material, as well as, of course, our exam preparation material. Ludmila, and also in the Moscow region, Irina in St. Petersburg, and Ludmila in Samara, Volga region, who looks after all segments. So these are your local contacts. So should you have any questions on any of our learning materials, this is who you would get in touch with. I'll show the slide again. It'll also be included in the summary slides, which will be sent later this week or early next. So just to give you a little quick breakdown of what I'm going to cover today. So a lot of our learning resources have had a little bit of an acceleration in their development due to the situation in the last year. So there'll be a little bit of reflection of what happened in the last year and Cambridge's response to it. I'm going to briefly look at the sort of history of the flipped approach. This seems to be something that got a lot more attention over the last year. And I'll pose the question, is it really such a new thing for ELT? Then we'll look at some of the updated materials which have benefited from sort of an accelerated approach to our development based upon what we've learned since the COVID situation. But I'll go into most detail on Test and Train. And just to tell you now what Test and Train is, our print publishing in the future will all be accompanied by free online practice tests. So the first courses to have this are Compact and Complete at B2 level, and Open World Advanced. So these 3 courses are available now, and they are available with free online practice tests, and that is Test and Train. So that's what I'm going to go over today. But first, I'm going to think back to about just over a year ago. Like a year ago in March, our immediate response to the situation was to put our resources in a very visible spot. We'll be quite honest and say we have a lot of resources on our websites. Our websites have grown over the time I've been with Cambridge, and it can be sometimes not always easy to find everything that you want to find. So we put all our resources together into one location. And what we did here was put the class audio there to give students control of the class audio, at least if they find themselves not able to join their teacher in a classroom. We put together all the other resources, and we also put together remote teaching guides. So this was one of the first things I did in the lockdown period. There were a few days of bliss where I stopped traveling and I was walking with my children through the local forest, and then all the work started coming. So I worked on this teaching guide for Compact first, and I just outlined what we did. We took a unit of the teacher's book and we rewrote the unit, assuming that we were in a remote teaching scenario. So assuming that we were not face-to-face with our students, but we were meeting them on Zoom, Teams, or whichever other sort of screen sharing technology was being used. So I went through one unit of the teacher's book and I rewrote it and suggested when certain activities might be useful for screen sharing, when you would use the chat box, breakout rooms, etc. So this was the first thing I did during the lockdown period last year. And I was very lucky. This was the second one that was written, so I had a very good model to follow. So no, I will really point out I had an adult course one to follow. Evolve was the first one that was written. But at the end of the guide, we gave some general strategies for the flipped approach. So the flipped approach in a nutshell is the idea that the student does work before the lesson instead of maybe doing work as homework after the lesson. So a lot more interest developed in the flipped approach, and one of our authors, Philip Kerr, put this paper together last summer. Now, I read this recently, and we will share the link for it, and I've borrowed a little bit from it in the next couple of slides. But the idea of flipped learning is covered in this paper, yeah, I've taken some ideas from it, so I just want to fully reference and acknowledge that to our author, Philip Kerr. So the flipped approach, a very, very brief history. It seems to have got a lot more attention in what we call the noughties in 2007. And the gentlemen, Bergman and Sams, they were American high school teachers who, what they actually did was they videoed their input lessons for their chemistry lessons, and they shared the video with students. And then in the actual class time, they had more time to focus on doing experiments and using that material and those resources rather than just doing the input and then running out of time and then leaving the student for homework to do resources. So video seemed to be the thing that really renewed or started this interest in what we called flipped learning. You'll probably all recognize the name Khan, Sal Khan from the Khan Academy, this YouTube channel with almost billions of views. So he gave quite a popular talk on TED 2011, and that gave interest in his sort of mission to give free education, and that's mostly by video. So this got a lot more interest in the flipped classroom. And TESOL is the American equivalent of IATEFL. They're both about 1 year younger or older than each other. I never remember which one. But in their conference in 2013, there were 3 papers on flipped learning. So there was interest. And 2 years later, there were 30 papers on flipped learning. So it seems that the greater availability of video was the thing that really renewed this interest in flipped learning from 2007 onwards. Bergman and Sams are very clear that they say that it's not about the technology that you use to flip your learning, it's more about the idea that your focus is moving away from the teaching and more onto the learner. So I would really suggest that flipped learning is maybe not so very new in ELT. If we think back to the 1980s, there was a gentleman in England called Ray Murphy, and he was trying to work out how he could make more use of his class time and cover less grammar. So English grammar and use, or what we call Blue Murphy affectionately, was thought of in the 1980s, published in 1985. So the idea of flipping your learning and doing it before class is certainly not new for ELT. And if flipped learning is really more about an approach and about being more student-centered, well then student-centered theories and approaches to teaching are literally as old as I am. So I'd like to say that was, you know, they were thought of in the 90s, but unfortunately it was the 70s. So I would say flipped learning, flipped classroom, much more attention in the last 10, 12 years. And that has been sort of driven by the greater ease of using technology, of using video, but I would suggest it's not really anything that terribly new for ELT. So it's been known for a long time that if you do work outside the classroom in advance, there's more communicative time in the classroom. So, but that is the basic idea of flipped learning, that you work on the lower order skills. So this is Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive skills. You know, you work on the remembering and the understanding, and then in the class you have time to apply, analyze, and maybe be creative with what you've learned. I would ask if our thinking processes are really so distinct. I know when I'm trying to learn something, if I really want to remember it, I have to try and get creative with it pretty soon. Otherwise, my 1970s memory won't work for me. I'd like to sort of briefly look at some of the challenges of flipped learning. It's often thought that it saves time, but it saves time in that you don't do homework. Instead, there's learning before the class. But you also have to have students who are really able to regulate themselves and to take that responsibility. If you have the situation where half your students are doing the preparatory work and half are not, then you've got a little bit of a challenge in the classroom. You also have a challenge if somebody's saying that many students resist the flipped class. I'm a man, so I'll struggle reading the chat, but do keep trying. I'll struggle to read it and go through the talk at the same time. But yeah, it is. And what do you do then if one of your students isn't going to play ball? If one student isn't going to carry along with the class, or maybe a sizable minority don't want to do it, or don't, we know that not every student always does their homework. So there is that challenge, and especially in an exams class where you maybe have to move somewhat in step, although you would still like to be able to personalize the learning for your student. But what is for sure, you will have more time for feedback if your students come prepared. So if you've done a reading in advance, done a listening in advance, etc. I just want to make a little comment on listening. I heard one of our teacher trainers in a talk over the winter talk about what you could do with a mobile phone, and his tip to the audience was to get the kids in the class to record the listening and then give them the ability to do the listening themselves. And I'm thinking, oh no, we work for a publisher. Olga says she can't hear a thing. Can other people hear me? Is it just Olga? I'll wait for some feedback on that. Okay, Olga, it may be your local connection. So yes, there are certainly challenges with the flipped approach, but with what I saw over the winter, somebody said, let the students record the listening, then they're in charge, they regulate what they do. And I think back to my teaching, I taught for over 10 years, I'll admit it's a bit about over 10 years ago. Then a listening exercise for me was very much, we're going to listen to this once or twice. I would have a gist task, a detailed task, and it was very much about press, press play on the cassette recorder at the time, and it was maybe a little bit too much. I could have given students more control of that, but the technology didn't exist at the time. But so it's good to see that it does now. So what I did as a teacher, and I taught for over 10 years, but it's been over a decade since I've really been in the classroom. But could you give me some ideas of what do you do to help encourage sort of learner autonomy and to encourage learner independence? Any ideas in the chat box? The two things that I did the most as a teacher were to encourage reading and dictionary use. So I taught adults predominantly. So we would go and walk to the local bookshop during one of our lessons. Each adult would buy one reader at the correct level, and then they would each read it and maybe write a little summary, and then they would share the readers with their classmates. And we'd build up a little personal library of readers. And then at the end of the lesson, or not the lesson, the end of the course, they would each take their own reader back. Dictionary use was something I really tried to do, and I would carry 8 or 10 dictionaries into the classroom, and it was kind of a physical exercise. And I think I probably got about 2 or 3 students in 10 to really learn to use a dictionary, and they would maybe buy a dictionary, and you would slowly start seeing students using an English dictionary. So these were the two main things that I did to encourage sort of autonomy. Nowadays, the Cambridge Dictionary Online is one of the most accessed dictionaries on the internet, full stop, and it's quite topical and kept up to date. So it suggests new words for the dictionary. If you go there, you can say, yes, please add this word to the dictionary, or no. I don't think it's considered very scientific data when we ask the public. But a new word that I read a few weeks ago is vaccine hunter. And this phrase refers to someone who takes it upon themselves to try and help their neighbors or older people in their community get an appointment for a vaccine. And then they share on social media that they've got 25 appointments for people, or 50 appointments, or so on. So, but I would say you now no longer have to carry those 10 dictionaries into your classroom. If you're able to use a dictionary with a mobile device in your classroom, this is great. And I would encourage you to register in the dictionary, and then you get access to word lists and quizzes and other little links to YouTube videos that are particularly relevant for students. And Yulia suggests a reading platform where you can read books. Yes, that is good. But paper's nice too, Yulia, that old-fashioned stuff. Oh, they get feedback. Okay, good. Something I learned for the first time this winter, I did a course, and I had never heard of this before, I will admit, a KWL graph. So this is the idea that before you start a unit or a chapter or a new topic, you write down what you know about it and what you want to know, and then you reflect on what you have learned. So this was new for me in an internal training course I did over the winter, and I didn't fill it in diligently, and I therefore didn't benefit from it. But I think that's the point. If I'm in a situation again in the future, I would engage with that more fully. So just to take stock of what we've looked at so far, we've covered sort of the immediate response to the COVID situation last year. We've looked at what flipped learning is. We've decided it's not actually that terribly new for ELT teachers. It's just become more popular because of the ease of using video and technology in recent years. And we've looked at some ideas to encourage self-study. And just looking ahead, I'm going to show some of our newest learning materials. Briefly look at the print materials, but more we'll look at cambridge1.org, which is our learning management system. And the main thing I want to talk about is the free practice tests that come with our resources called Test and Train. So before I talk about the books, I'd like you to put in the chat box, which word do you think might be behind the green box? So what do you think will replace books in the future? So someone said books will soon be obsolete in schools. It's possible to teach every branch of knowledge with the something. what would you insert in there? Would you put in the mobile phone, the tablet computer, the laptop? Any ideas of what we would put in there? The internet, yeah, screens. Screens is very close to the correct answer, yeah. Mobile. I think we'll, ebooks, yeah, internet. Screens, I think, is, we're going to say we have a winner. This is the actual word, the motion picture. So, and this was said in 1913, robots. This was said in 1913 by one of the, Thomas Edison, who had worked on the development of cinema, of moving images. And he was convinced that video, moving image, was so very important that we wouldn't really use books in the future. So it's 100 years later, and we're still using books. So I'm very hopeful that books will see me into retirement. I think paper will be around for a long time. I'm also convinced that we will be using much more digital resources, especially as what we've learned as to their effectiveness over the last year. So, very briefly looking at resources, we two new B2 level courses, Compact First and Complete First, and they're both in their 3rd editions. So it's a sign of how much they're loved by teachers far and wide. I'll just briefly say they've had over 50% new content in terms of reading and listening. So the texts have been updated. And a new design to make them more lively and to stand out more for students. You'll remember in our last talk, we were told about these little videos which are accessed with QR codes. So these are throughout the course in Compact. They're not available for Complete. It's not a feature of Complete, but they're in Compact and they're in open world. And these little videos give students the ability to look in at grammar before the lesson, after the lesson, or during the lesson, as you, the teacher, wish to say. So you gives you the ability to sort of flip the learning that way if you want. Open World is a course which Andrei mentioned earlier. It's a brand new advanced course. It's one of the first new course we've had in over a decade for advanced. We've been updating our courses, but this is a brand new course. It was available at A2 to B2, and now it's available at C1. I'm just going to mention 2 features of it. One is its focus on real-world language, and very often what we might have to write for an exam or write in a formal letter is very different from the language we might hear when we're in an English-speaking country. So this little exchange between George and William, there are 3 expressions which could be replaced by one of the words or expressions A to G. So we'll do the first one together, and then I'll let you think about the rest. So, hey, how's it going, says George. William says, good, thanks. I haven't seen you for a long time. So a lovely use of present perfect. And we could replace that with, I would say, G, it's been a while. So if you want to take a little look at the other 2 and decide which other expressions might replace them, and we'll I bet maybe, you know. Could be I bet, but it's more oh, I bet's very popular. Yeah, D is coming in. D's a good answer, I think. So here we go. So number 1, it's been a while. I haven't seen you for a long time. And 2, he could say, tell me about it. Yeah, I always think of Joey and Friends. Tell me about it. And no way, where are you doing that? Whereabouts? And I know that whereabouts can be quite problematic. If a speaker in an English-speaking country says where, that's fine. Where do you want to go, or where do you come from? Whereabouts is just that little bit, less common and less likely to be something in a course book. So I suppose the point I'm making is there's a focus on real-world language in open world and expressions that you might hear in an English-speaking country or from speakers of English. So it covers the language you need for an exam and the language that you will encounter in the real world. The other feature which we've covered already earlier this afternoon is the push yourself sections. So in every level of the coursebook series, there is a mostly grammar, so mostly language, but sometimes also vocabulary and writing sections, which are at 1 CEFR above the level of the course. So in the B2 level, there's a C1 sections, push yourself. In the C1 level of the course, there are proficiency level exercises. So this gives your stronger students a challenge, and all your students a challenge if you want, and helps you deal with mixed ability classes. So that's open world. And now I'll very quickly cover Cambridge One. So Cambridge One is our new learner management system. It's been around for a few years, and slowly, starting this summer, and then again next summer, we will have the vast majority of all our courses hosted on our new platform. A very important thing to say about our new platform is that it is designed with the mobile phone in mind from the beginning. So our outgoing Cambridge Learner Management System is very, very good. It's been very successful, the most used language learning platform in the world. But it was designed at a time when people had laptops, desktops, and not everyone thought about accessing the internet and the mobile phone in the way that we do today. So if you go to cambridge1.org, you can set yourself up a free teacher account, and we have demo content of Compact First, Complete First, Open World Advanced, and also of Prepare and other courses there, and you can see, test, and train. So please feel free to do that after the session at any time. There's a great deal of content that you can access there. For Open World Advanced, there are 3 units of the student's book, workbook, and teacher's book for you to download in full color files with the audio to really teach with a book for a few units to see if it's something you would like to use. So that's Cambridge One, our platform, and our platform hosts the digital packs. So the Cambridge One digital packs come now for students in their print book, and for teachers in their teacher's book. So students get test and train, free online exam practice. They also get practice extra, which is the equivalent of an online workbook. So extra language and vocabulary exercises which follow the unit structure of the book. And every print book that we sell will come with an ebook as well. So should we find ourselves in the situation of sort of school closures or distance learning, remote learning again, you can know with confidence that if you're using a Cambridge course book, you will have access to an ebook as well as a print book for every student. The teacher gets the same resources. Their digital pack comes with the teacher's book. In addition to those resources mentioned, there will be test generating software and Presentation Plus software. And to activate it, you need to make contact with your Cambridge representative. So that's the digital packs which are sitting on Cambridge One. And now we'll look at the ebook. So the ebook is enhanced with the audio. I think the best use of this, and this is something I wish I had as a language learner, you can access the listening and be in control, and you can navigate listening by clicking on the tape script. So that's something I've never had. I mean, I'm living in a German-speaking country, and I learn a little bit of German. And when I look at the learning resources available for German compared to English, they're just not as advanced, and nothing like this has ever been visible to me anyway, that I could navigate a listening by moving a cursor. So that's the ebook. Practice Extra is the equivalent of an online workbook, and then we'll test and train is the main thing I wish to cover today. So students get access to test and train from their print book. This is class-based. The teacher will share an access key so that they can join together on the platform. Students can do, they see immediately 2 practice tests, and they can do them in any order and as many times as they want. They can jump in and jump out and do them, and they can open up the reading, listen to listening text, etc. The teacher can also assign the full class certain sections of papers. So the student is in control, they can do whatever they want, and you as the teacher can also say, can everybody please do this before the next lesson? So both of those things are possible with the 2 practice tests that the students have immediate sight of. The student will see tips and guidance, so they'll be told what this part of the exam is testing, and they'll be given some strategies to attempt that. And wherever possible, we give feedback on their correct and incorrect answers. So it's obvious to you all that we can't do this everywhere. It's only where a machine can read the answer. So when the answer is A, B, C, D, or if it's one word, this is possible. So I don't want to overstate, but there is feedback in selected exercises. So we think this is a great way to really encourage students to do an exercise, maybe get it wrong and be told why it's wrong, and then they can try again, and that can really facilitate their learning. But also if they get it correct, maybe be really reinforcing why it's correct. So there's both positive feedback and teaching feedback for exercises that are wrong wherever possible. Now, when it comes to the more productive skills, a different approach is taken. So for the writing, there is description and exposure to writing tasks and questions and sample answers. And then the student can look at examiner comments on those answers. So it's a sort of a show and an outlining approach. And similar is true of speaking. So for speaking, there is a full speaking test video, and there are examiner tips, examiner commentary on how those students performed, and then you get to see the images and the words that were used to stimulate the conversation. So for the more productive skills, it's more of a mixed media approach. I've talked about 2 practice tests that students see immediately. There's actually a 3rd practice test that comes with all our print publishing. It's a little different in that it's not designed to work on a mobile phone. It's designed to work in a desktop environment, and that's for the very simple reason that computer-based exams do not work on a mobile phone. So if you want to give a timed practice test, it should be using the same resources that a student would use. So you have a 3rd test that you can decide to turn on. It's timed, but the student can pause the time and answer the doorbell if necessary. So you can use this as a mock test as and when you wish. So test and train, we've looked at it so far. It's available with our print publishing. There are 2 on-the-go exam practice for reading, use of English, listening. Students can do these as many times as they want. You can also assign them to your students to do certain bits of the exam before the next lesson. And there's a time practice test that you as the teacher decide when the students do it. This is included with our print publishing. This is not an additional purchase at all. But we take a more mixed media approach with speaking and writing. So test and train does not collect writing. It just shows the student what to do. It does not record a speaking test. So those are 2 things that it does not do, but it does expose the student to what is expected of them. So that's the class-based test and train. We also have a self-study version. So the self-study version contains 6 full tests. However, there is no teacher view. So just as the quote says, if students have really built some autonomy with your help, then it's time for them to take even more responsibility for what they learn. So maybe perhaps towards the end of the school year, students can access a self-study version of test and train, and they get 6 full tests to do and to drill before the exam. This was made available for B2 First on the 4th of May this year, and it will be made available for C1 Advanced in September, so after the school break. And then over the rest of the next 12 months, we will be rolling this out for our other exams. But for now, this is available for B2 First, and the next to be made available is C1 Advanced. So test and train, you have it available with print publishing for free included, 3 tests, and then students can buy 6 more tests. But the self-study version does not have teacher oversight or teacher view of what's happening. So I appreciate that's quite a lot covered, and I'm just going to draw to a close. But just to summarize again, test and train comes through print publishing. There are 3 tests available with each Open World Advanced, Compact First and Complete First, and the teacher can see what the student has done and can see their progress. We also have a self-study version, and it's available from testandtrain.com. So it's a global e-commerce website. So that's how it's available in the first instance. We hope to also be selling it through our partners in many countries. But for now, you can go to testandtrain.com, ask your students to go to testandtrain.com, and they can buy 6 practice tests for B2 First. That's available today. So the self-study has 6 tests. There is no teacher review. It's available today for B2 First and C1 Advanced from September. And this is a result of what we learned during the lockdown. We need to give more options to students. We need to give them the audio. We need to give them the ability to decide what they want to do. So I promised a few links. So these links will come in the follow-up version of the slides. Please do look at cambridgeone.org, set up yourself with a free account and look at our sample material. I've also included a link to the paper by Philip Kerr and testandtrain.com. And most importantly, please do take a note of your local Cambridge representative and get in touch with them if you have any questions. So I've tried to get you back on schedule, but I didn't manage too well. But anyway, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'll hand back to the organizer.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much for introducing this new tool, Test and Train. It looks really, really great. So in our follow-up email, we will share some information. So I think that teachers and learners will definitely benefit from it. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. Thank you, Yulia. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So let's move to our next session. AI-powered English testing. So I'm very, very happy to introduce Ian Colley. Ian has been involved in English language teaching and assessment for 25 years, with his time fairly split between working overseas as a teacher, academic manager, examiner trainer, and exam center manager, and working for Cambridge Assessment English in the UK. Ian is currently the Global Product Manager for Business Qualifications, Cambridge English Placement Test, and he was involved in the development of Cambridge English new online testing product, LinguaSkill. So Ian, hello, thank you very much for joining us today. You have already opened your presentation, so I could do it for you, but that's okay. That's okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Yulia, and thanks very much, everybody, for taking the time to listen to my presentation today. And I'm going to give you a quick tour of our new online testing product that Yulia mentioned called LinguaSkill. So there are some key features of LinguaSkill that you need to know about. As we mentioned, it's 100% online. And it's available on demand, which means that unlike other Cambridge qualifications, there are no set dates with LinguaSkill. You can decide when the test is taken. The test can be taken at home, and as you can imagine, it's the one Cambridge English testing product that has done really well and has helped people during the global pandemic, because people are able to take the test at home on their computers. It's multi-level. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. It uses the latest adaptive testing technology that's been developed by Cambridge Assessment, and I'll tell you more about that in a few minutes. It has very fast results, and I'm also going to show you some of the great reporting that we have available with LinguaSkill. So I mentioned that the test is online, and you can access it through the Cambridge English testing portal that you can see on the right-hand side of my screen. And this portal is used both by our clients who log on here. They can purchase tests, they can upload candidates' details, they can access and print off all results. And it's also used by candidates who take the test, who enter an entry code, which is provided to them by their by their exam centre, and then they take the test. So everything is done through the one portal, which makes it very simple and easy to use. It's a modular test, and there are 3 modules that you can choose from. There is a listening and reading module, which we call the core module, which also includes grammar and vocabulary, and that takes around an hour. And there is a separate writing test, which takes around 45 minutes, and a separate speaking test, which takes 12 minutes. And you can use these 3 tests in any combination. You can also see that I've mentioned the speed of the results here. I said at the beginning of my presentation, the results are available very quickly. Well, for the listening and reading module, the results are available instantly. So as soon as candidates finish the test, you can log on and access their results. The writing results we guarantee within 24 hours, but actually the results are back much more quickly than that. Generally, it's a matter of minutes, but we guarantee them within 24 hours. And the speaking test, we guarantee within 48 hours. Although again, the results are generally back much more quickly, usually within 10 to 12 hours. So this means that you can take a 4 skills language test online and get your results guaranteed within 48 hours, if not much more quickly than that. There are 2 options of LinguaSkill available. LinguaSkill General, this is a test of everyday English. Those of you who are familiar with other Cambridge products such as First or Advanced, these are also qualifications of general English. So the context of the LinguaSkill General is exactly the same. And LinguaSkill Business is a test of business English or workplace English. No specific knowledge of business is required, but this is very popular both with students studying in higher education institutions on business-related courses or those working in the corporate sector. It's a multi-level test, which means that one test can be used with candidates of all levels of ability, from pre-A1 all the way up to C1. And there are also versions of the test available for students with special needs, so with sight or hearing impairment. We also have versions of the test available for those candidates as well. So I mentioned that the test uses adaptive testing technology. You may or may not be aware that Cambridge launched the first online adaptive English language assessment more than 15 years ago now. And so we've developed the algorithm that we use in LinguaSkill over many years. But the way that it works is as follows. If you look at the graph on the bottom right-hand side of my screen, so all students taking the test, and this is specifically about the listening and the reading test, start with a question of around A2 level of ability. If they get that question right, the next question is slightly more difficult. If they get that question right, the next question is more difficult again. If they get that question wrong, the next question is slightly easier. And the algorithm goes through this process until the student's level has been determined. Now, there are a number of benefits to using this type of technology. First thing to say is that it's very accurate because it pinpoints exactly what a student's level of ability is. It focuses on their level. It's also a very motivating experience for students, and feedback that we've received is that students really like the test because they will always see questions at or around their ability level. So that means that they'll always see questions that they can attempt. They may get them right, they may get them wrong, but it's a test that they feel that they can achieve well in because they always see questions around their level of ability.
Ian, sorry for interrupting you.
Yes.
That your slides are frozen. Let me reopen the presentation for you. Please.
Oh, okay.
Stop sharing the screen.
Sure.
go back to the webinar platform. I will open the slides.
Okay, sorry about that.
Just a second. No, this is just some technical issues. Which slide do we need? Maybe.
Keep going a little bit further. Yes, this one.
This one. Okay, great.
Great. Thanks very much, Julia.
Yes, just click on the arrows to change the slides and it will work.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing to mention about this test is that it's also highly secure, because no two students will ever see the same questions in the same order, which means that even if you've got students sitting in the same room together taking the assessment, the chances of them cheating are much less, because they won't be seeing the same test. Each test is unique to the students taking it. Okay, so I mentioned that LinguaSkill is a multi-level test. Here is a diagram that shows you all our exams and tests, and you can see here in the purple and red are our level-based qualifications. I'm sure you're very familiar with these. These are qualifications all at a specific level on the CFR, and you can see that LinguaSkill, like IELTS, is a multi-level test, and it can test students from pre-A1, and the highest level that they can receive is a C1. And this is very useful. So, for example, if you want to test large groups of students who all have different levels of ability, perhaps you want to do it at the beginning of the course to place students on a course, you can use the same test. It's also a great test that can be used for progress and exit testing as well. And again, it means that you only need to invest in one testing solution that you can use with all your students. It fits very well with level-based courses, because students who are studying at a particular level, let's say A2, for example, when they take the LinguaSkill test, because they're at that A2 level, all the questions that they'll see, the grammatical structures, the vocabulary, etc., will be the same as that they've been studying on their level-based course. So let's have a little look at the reporting that's available with LinguaSkill. So there are two types of report. This is the individual report that candidates receive. And you can see, if we look at the top here, they get an average score, which is based on the modules that they've taken. So this student has taken listening, reading, which, as I told you before, is one test, and also the speaking module. So the average score is based on those three modules. If they did the 4 skills, it would be based on the 4 skills test. If they just did the 2, listening and reading, then the average score would be based on them. And so what they get is a Cambridge English scale score and a CFR level, and then a bar chart that describes where the students are within that CFR level. And that's possible because of the use of the Cambridge English scale. For those of you who are not familiar with the Cambridge English scale, we've broken each CFR level down into 20 points, and this allows us to determine exactly where a candidate is within that level. So in addition to that, they get the same information for each of the skills, Cambridge English scale score, also the date when they took the test, CFR level in the bar chart, and then they get these can-do descriptors. So the can-do descriptors form part of the CFR. There are literally hundreds of them that have been written to describe what students are able to do with the language that they have at a particular level and for a particular skill. And these can-do statements therefore change depending on the results that the candidates get, and provides the candidates and also any recognizing institution, university or employer, gives them more information about what a candidate is able to do with the English that they have at that level. The other really nice feature about this test report form is that if students are required to receive a particular CFR level across the skills, let's say that they have to achieve a B2 level in 4 skills, but perhaps they only achieved a B1 level in their speaking test. Well, unlike other Cambridge qualifications, they don't need to retake the whole exam. Within a 3-month window, they just need to retake that one particular skill, and then the test report form will be updated. It always provides the highest scores that students receive in that 3-month window. So that's a really nice feature which cuts down on the costs for the students, and also means that they can just work on improving one skill instead of having to take the whole exam. So in addition to that individual report, there's also a group report which is available for institutions. So this provides the same information that you saw on the previous report, but for a cohort of students. So if you want to compare the results of students in a class, or you want to compare the results of students in different classes over a period of time, it's really easy to do it with this report. You can also download this to Excel, and then if you want to do any further analysis, work out the mean, median, or the mode scores of a particular cohort of students, you can do that as well. So I mentioned that the tests can be taken at home. It is a secure test, which means that it does need to be proctored or invigilated, whichever word you prefer. And so if students were to take it in a pre-COVID world, students would take this on site at the institution or the university or wherever, and students would take it in the computer lab, and there would be an invigilator present to check that the students are not cheating. But we also have a remote proctoring service available, a range of remote proctors and different services ranging from full human proctoring through to a fully recorded AI proctoring service that you can choose from. But this allows us to ensure that the test is taken securely and at home. For an added level of security, we also have a results checking service, and this means that any receiving institution, anybody who's looking to receive the results of a student, can go online, fill in a few details, and ensure that the results that they've been given are a true representation of the scores that the students got. So just a few more things I wanted to mention. We do have some learning available to go with the LinguaSkill test. We have an online course available, and you can find out more details on our LinguaSkill website. It's a course, you can choose the modules. There's one for listening and reading, one for speaking, one for writing. We've also got versions for the general and the business course. And for any students who really want to practice before they take the LinguaSkill test, this is a great course for them. It will also help them to improve their level of English. Like all our other qualifications, LinguaSkill is a very communicative test. There's lots of grammar and vocabulary, writing and speaking activities that form part of the course. So as well as preparing for the test, they will also improve their English language skills. We've also got a great range of free materials available on our website, and for any of you who'd like to have a look at the test and maybe try out a demo for yourselves, I do recommend that you go to the Cambridge Assessment English website and search for LinguaSkill. Two products in particular I wanted to mention is Write and Improve and Speak and Improve. If you've not seen these before, these are available to you free of charge. They use the same AI technology that can be found in the LinguaSkill speaking and writing tests. So they give you great communicative English practice with feedback. And the idea is that you, with both of them actually, you get tasks, you prepare your answer, the AI technology then assesses it, looks at particular features for the writing, things like your grammar, vocabulary, punctuation, sentence structure. Same for the speaking, your fluency, your use of the language, etc. It gives you feedback. The idea is that you then review that feedback, try again. Your answers are then marked a second time, and the idea is that you input your writing or speaking, you get the feedback, and then you improve. Hence the name. So do have a look at those. They're really great products, and they're free. So I just wanted to finish off with a few case studies of how LinguaSkill is used. So it's used widely in the higher education sector around the world. I mentioned that it can be used at the beginning of a course. So it can be used, for example, in Nanyang Technical University in Singapore. They use it with their international postgraduate students to check their level of English before they come to the university. It can also be used, as I mentioned, as a progress or an exit test. In Spain, it's used. In Spain, students need to graduate with a B1 level in a foreign language, and they can use LinguaSkill to prove that. In the case of the RMIT University in Vietnam and others as well, it's used with the academic staff. So that means that teachers who are teaching on EMI courses, English of the Medium of Instruction courses, can take LinguaSkill so that the universities can assess their language skills and see if they need further training. So it can be used in a wide variety of situations. I mentioned about Spain, about the graduation, B1 graduation. It can also be used for teachers applying for master's programs in Spain, and also for any students who want to apply for Erasmus. They can also use LinguaSkill. And to give you examples from the corporate sector, in Spain in particular, it's used for anybody applying for civil service jobs where English is a requirement. They can use it, and also to certify their level at the end of courses, maybe government-run language courses. They can also use LinguaSkill for that as well. You'll all be familiar, of course, with Sberbank, a very long-standing user of LinguaSkill. We have a very long relationship with them. I was actually involved in a benchmarking study with Sberbank a few years ago, where we set the level of English that was required for a number of jobs within the bank. They mapped these jobs onto a framework, and then they use this information for recruitment and training purposes. So they knew exactly what level of English they expected employees to have, and if they didn't, there would be a language training program, and the employees would know what level of English they needed to obtain, and LinguaSkill was used for all these purposes. So just to finish off, here are some examples from around the world of how LinguaSkill is used in the higher education, corporate and government ministries. So I hope you found my short presentation useful, and if you do have any questions, I'm sure Julia will be happy to put you in contact with me, and I shall answer them for you. So thank you very much for your time, and Julia, that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you for this detailed presentation about LinguaSkill. At the beginning of the conference, I said a few words about our contest for universities from Russia, Armenia, and Belarus. At the end of the conference, I will repeat this information. So I hope, dear colleagues, that this session will be very useful for this contest, for your motivational letter about LinguaSkill. So thank you very much, and now let's move to the next session about certificate in EMI skills, English as a medium of instruction. And I'm very, very happy to introduce Ekaterina Redkina. Ekaterina is a psychologist, a qualified English teacher, and Cambridge Assessment English presenter. Ekaterina, please join us.
Yeah. Can you see me?
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very
Hello.
much for joining us today. So I've just opened your presentation. Can you see it?
Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's start, everyone. I can assume you are tired. You've been here for quite a while, so thank you for staying. We're a little bit out of the timing, but my session is quite short, so I'll try to be quick and tell you everything I want to say. Okay, so also I'm sorry if you hear any background noises, because there is some construction going on in the house, and obviously they have just started making these noises. Everything was pretty fine before that, so I'm sorry for that if it disturbs you. Well, a few words about me and why I'm here. I'm a psychologist and an English teacher, which makes me kind of a double specialist. And for me, the topic of EMI, English as a medium of instruction, has always been the biggest interest. And I've been teaching English to psychology students at different universities. Now I'm working for Moscow Pedagogical State University in Moscow. So I've been teaching kind of EMI, ESP, CLIL-ish, EAP courses for the last 14 years. So, well, we can assume that this is my absolutely area of interest. And what I will talk about today is this EMI area, EMI skills certificate. But before that, I want you to understand how this qualification fits into all other Cambridge qualifications, which are multiple and probably which you know about already. Again, you might have seen this already, the so-called teaching framework. So it's a framework that helps us understand the levels of teaching qualifications. So it's not about level of English, like A1, A2, C1, and so on, right? This is about teaching, well, development, professional development, and there are 4 stages which come, as you see on the slide, from green foundation up to the blue one, expert. And it also, each of these stages includes 5 aspects. They are on the slide, I'm not going to read them, but the whole idea is that all together, the combination of 4 stages and 5 aspects give you a very full rubric. If you use it, you might understand where you are, you can place yourself. So this rubric forms, well, kind of the basis for the courses and qualifications for English teachers. Some of these qualifications might look very familiar, and I think they do, right? Many teachers know about CELTA and TKT and Delta. And what we are talking about today, you see, I've sort of highlighted it on the screen. This is EMI skills qualification, which stands somewhere between proficient and expert, right? So now at least you know how it's connected. You don't need to get EMI skills qualification after Delta or any of the previous ones. No. As you probably know, all qualifications can be taken separately and individually. So there is no succession that you need to follow, well, unless CELTA Delta is recommended, but EMI can be taken, very separately. So generally, what is EMI context for you to understand, right? So once again, EMI stands for English as a medium of instruction, and it describes a course or different courses where teaching, subject teaching, is delivered in English. Usually, this is done to students who are not first language English speakers, like Russians, for example, right? And often done by teachers who are also not first language English speakers. So as an example, we might look at a Russian professor of, let's say, economics, who is teaching economics to Russian students, but in English. And that's what I've been doing for the last, well, more or less 10 years. I was teaching psychology, different variations, lectures on psychology, some practical courses on psychology in English. But I'm not L1 English speaker, right? And my students are Russian. So if you do this, or if you do something similar, this would be EMI context. Many teachers in Russia, actually, they're already doing EMI, though they might not even know about it, right? Many universities now are moving into the subjects taught in English. And so if you're doing anything like this, you're probably already on the EMI path, more or less. If you take any EMI course, well, sort of classical course, usually language is not taught on such a course. I mean, language is not taught to students. So let's imagine I teach a course on psychology, right, to my students. So I do not teach language specifically. We expect our students to have a sufficient level already again, I'm talking about ideal situation. It might be different in different contexts, right? But classically, EMI is like this. And level of English is usually tested before students apply for the course and start the course. So there is a high chance they really know, well, language to a sufficient level. And obviously, if you are teaching an EMI course, you are also expected to have a certain level. Which one I'm going to tell you. As I said, there are different EMI contexts, and we can assume that in different countries, EMI courses will look differently. And there is a range or sort of continuum on the course delivery, because some courses might be delivered and given only and entirely in English. Other courses might be delivered mostly in English or partly in English. So what it means for us as instructors and what it means for the students? Well, of course, it gives a certain range in terms of levels. For courses that are taught completely and fully in English, we expect both instructors, teachers, and students have at least B2, well, that's for students, and C1, that's for teachers levels, right? If we're talking about course that is taught partially in English, then B2 might be enough for a teacher. And again, a reasonable level of B2, let's say B1 plus for the learner. Well, if you are interested in EMI, then you might be interested in certificate in EMI skills or EMI skills qualification. What is this about? First of all, who is it for? It's for university teachers or university professors, for lecturers, right? So if you're giving lectures. Also, it might be useful for tutors, even for researchers. So if you're not giving lectures, these courses can also be very beneficial. So again, this is for those whose first language is not English, but who teach students in English and who teach some content, some specific content. You might be teaching, I don't know, biology or psychology or, I don't know, sociology or some other content area. And well, these courses will help you to do it effectively. If you're not teaching, but if you are into academia as a researcher, these courses might be helpful for your further academic development, you know, sort of professional development. It might help you to present at conferences with your, you know, research and so on. And of course, well, interact with colleagues. This course, certificate in EMI skills, well, originally it is for teaching staff in higher education, as I said. Good thing about this course is that it's a combination of online and blended learning. Mostly the course is done online. I'm going to show you some examples what is happening on the course, and you can do it at your own pace, which I found when I was doing it very useful. The entrance level to this course is B1 and above. Well, I've done this course, so I can say that solid B1 level, B1 plus would be enough for the course. Of course, if you have a higher level, you will do it faster, right? But if you have just B1, you still can do it, and you will find it actually very beneficial, very good for your language as well, right? Because there are so many words that you learn, because there is a very big vocabulary focus. A lot of grammar points are discussed, grammar necessary for, let's say, for lectures, for seminars, for public, you know, presentations. So a very big language focus is in this course. So they're not talking only about some, you know, presentation skills. No, they're giving you tips on language, and even if you have B1, you will manage, and also you will actually develop your language skill, which I think is like killing two birds with one stone. That's very good. about the course itself. It has 8 modules. It's about 40 online hours, which I think is quite impressive. And because it's a blended course, you might have up to 24 hours of face-to-face, which might be optional, and well, that you don't need to do it, but you might. So as for the modules, these are the names of them. And you see, modules are language specific. They even called language 4, this and that. It's not only about language, it's also about some presentational tips and generally tips for teachers, even how to communicate with students on certain topics. So very interesting and useful course. Even looking at this now, you might be thinking which of these modules you might be specifically interested in. I borrowed many things from this course. When I started it, I didn't expect much of it because I thought, well, I've been teaching psychology in English for a while anyway, and I've been giving lectures. So I thought, what can I get out of the course? I thought, well, I kind of know everything. Obviously, I was wrong because it gives you a lot, even if you are a specialist, even if you've been in the field for a while, for many years, and even if you're presenting at the conferences, if you are doing research and, I don't know, publishing articles, all these can still be very useful for you. And I found many things that I started implementing into my lectures, for example, lectures in psychology. You can see here just a few print screens of the course. It's just the contents, module 1, module 2, 4, and 7, just random pages. You see how packed it is, how many things are going on, and each of these small sections can be enlarged and will give you more and more. So it's a very packed, good, you know, course. What can you see there? You have a lot of things in it, so it's not just reading. I would even say reading is the smallest part. It's very interactive. It has engaging content. Sorry, there are some short videos to watch and make some, you know, do some tasks after them. There are some listening tasks, graphs, tables, diagrams, multiple matching, gap fill. So I found it very interesting, and it's not boring, right? Teachers are usually busy people, well, right? So you don't have much time to do it, but this one is fun. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. So video demonstrations, audio tasks, as I said, as you see here, probably, I don't know if it's visible, you well, have different tasks like ticking the boxes. It could be dragging, you know, the answer, and just filling the gaps. So all the typical tasks we have in different tests, well, we have them here. Very nice platform, very user-friendly, by the way, very user-friendly. So also some tasks are interactive, like this one. Listen to the parts of the lecture and answer the question. What do you think the lecturer will talk about next? So you need to type your text. So it's not just clicking and choosing, right? This is an open-end question, which can be more challenging, but again, interesting. As for assessment on this course is informal. So it's not a classical assessed qualification. So the progress is tracked throughout the course online, and this course also has course administrators. Usually they are local teachers from your university. They can track progress as well. And at the end of the course, when you complete it, participants can download the certificate of completion. Yes, as I said, there is a local course administrator. So when you apply for the course, you usually do it from your university, and ideally there is a group of teachers who apply together. I'm not going to talk about application procedure because that's more technical, okay? I wanted to show you the insides of the course, but all the information can be found online on cambridgeenglish.org. This is our main hub where you can find all the information you need. So what else I wanted to say is that about assessment. There are 4 written assignments within each module. They're not big, so it's not like you're doing a CELTA or a Delta, where assignments are really massive and you spend a lot of time and you need to do a lot of reading. Here, everything you need is on the platform already. So you do the reading if it's necessary, or do some interactive, I don't know, you watch a video, you listen to an audio, and then you do the written assignments. And at the end of the module, there is also a progress test. So you complete a multiple choice test to check what you've learned. This certificate altogether, to sum it up, well, it's practical because it develops your teaching skills. And well, as I said, I do believe that it also develops your language skills a lot. And this is very important for teachers who are not L1 language English speakers, right? From my experience, I know that developing my own English, my own level of English, is a tricky thing because, well, I don't have time to work on my level, right? But well, I want to develop anyway. This course is a good chance for a good chance to do it. So what else? As I said, it's accessible for teachers, right? And it's very flexible because it's online and blended together. And to sum it up, I think people who do the course will be able to use English more effectively. That's true. And again, no matter how much, you know, how much experience you have, how big is your background. You will definitely improve skills in delivering instruction in English. Whatever you're doing, is it a seminar, is it a lecture? If you're not giving lectures in English yet, you can start doing bits of it for your students and see how it goes. I think this course is also good for people who want to start giving lectures, or, you know, partially giving lectures or seminars in English. I think this is a very good starting point. And you will learn a variety of language options for different teaching situations. For example, how to start a lecture, what words to start with, what phrases. So there is a lot of functional language on the course. And if you are a very organized student like myself, you will be probably having a whole you know, notebook for writing down things and new useful vocabulary. I learned so many verbs from this course that I can use, and also nuances of meanings of different verbs. And now I try to use verbs very carefully when I teach and when I, well, speak in general. Well, this is it from me now, okay? I told you that's going to be quick. This is me if you want to get in touch and ask me some questions. And sorry, I forgot to put it on the slide, cambridgeenglish.org. This is our website where you can look for more information on EMI, okay? But again, EMI course, well, I see you liked it, thank you. EMI course is, well, the application happens from the university, you know, if you're affiliate of the university or some school. So please check how to do it technically, okay? Well, thank you very much. Yeah, there is a link now in the chat which you can follow. Thank you. Yeah, I see some familiar names. That's great. That is great. Can you be considered an EMI instructor if you teach a theoretical course of English phonetics in English? That's a very good question. Well, probably, yeah. You know, well, EMI is an umbrella term, the same as CLIL, and there are as many opinions as authors, and different people will tell you different things. Like CLIL, which is also my big favorite thing. Well, there is a lot of disagreement what actually is CLIL. So I'm pretty sure that I might tell you that, yes, this looks like EMI to me, but someone will tell you, no, that's not exactly EMI because of some reasons. But I don't think it matters. You can call yourself an EMI instructor because, well, you teach content in English. You are not English native, and your students are also not L1 English speakers. So it kind of makes sense to me. Okay. Oh, people are eager to do the course. I'm happy. That's great. Oh, some people from Krasnodar. Yeah, good. Good to see you. Hello. Well, if no more questions, I'm awfully sorry. I have to go because my group actually starts in a minute, my online group. So have a nice day, everyone, okay? And thank you.
Thank you, Ekaterina. Thank you for introducing this great course, EMI. I think that this is really useful for teachers. So in our follow-up email, we will share some links to our website with detailed information about the course. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day, and good luck with your classes. Say hello to your students.
Oh, yeah, I will. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. So, dear colleagues, now let's move to the last session of our conference. Higher Education Admissions Tests identify students with the greatest potential. I'm very, very happy to welcome our presenter, Yvette. Hello, Yvette. Can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, I can. Thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for waiting. Sorry for this delay. But I'm opening your presentation. Just a second. Here it is. Can you see it?
Yes, I can. Yeah, that's great.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for staying on to listen to my slot here. So first of all, so just to talk a bit about us. So as you know, this is something a bit different. We've been hearing a lot about English language teaching and learning, but the department I work in is a different part within Cambridge Assessment. We are Cambridge Assessment Admissions Testing. And what we do is we don't produce tests of English language. We're looking at assessments for selection to study and work. And what we try and help organisations do is to identify applicants with the potential to succeed. When we're developing our tests, we're really trying to look at developing tests that will help universities identify the students who will have the best chances of success on their course and who will go on to do well. And that's part of the design of our assessments, and it's a big part of the focus on the research and test validation that we do, linking our scores to academic success on course. And we've been around for 20 years working with world-leading universities. Started very much with our own university in Cambridge and Oxford, and universities like University College London and Imperial in the UK. But we're now really working with universities globally and with applicants globally, traveling around the world to different universities. So we really have a very international focus. And fairness for international students and facilitating this international process is another big concern of ours. And finally, one of the big drivers behind what we do is around widening access to higher education. We believe everyone should have the opportunity to prove their potential and to get those really valuable places at higher education. So one of our key concerns is about ensuring that people from all backgrounds, all walks of life have that ability to prove their potential through our assessments. So who uses our tests worldwide? Well, these are just a few of the logos that we have. So you can see it's a really international picture here and some really great universities. Okay, so I said what our assessments don't cover. They're not tests of English language, but this is a brief overview of what our tests do test. So we produce a range of assessments in different areas that can be used for things like admission to medicine, dentistry, sciences, engineering, and economics. And there are sort of three main areas that we're looking at. One of the key areas of focus is the thinking skills. This is, critical thinking, which is, we think of reasoning using everyday language, and problem solving, which is more the reasoning using numerical skills. So these are skills that are often not tested as part of school qualifications or the qualifications people take after school for admissions to university, but they're really, really crucial in terms of, being able to learn independently and to have the skills to, analyze information and find solutions that are really needed in higher education and in the modern workplace as well. So these are the sorts of skills that both employers and universities are increasingly seeking. Another strand of our assessments is the application of science and maths knowledge. So in this case, we're not looking at reassessing the science and maths that people have learnt at school. It's more looking at, can they apply the knowledge that they've learnt and that's been assessed in school qualifications in a way that really understands their ability to their deep understanding of this and their ability to apply this knowledge to new situations. So it's really taking it a step further in some ways, while, in terms of use of the knowledge. And we also have another assessment which is completely different in terms of focusing on the non-cognitive assessment of attitudes and behaviours. I'll talk more about this later, but I think we all know that what students actually do and the way they behave is as important as what they know for success in education. So this is another of our areas of assessment. Okay, so just wanted to go in and give you a very brief overview of some of our assessments and how they work. So the first one I wanted to talk about was the biomedical admissions test, and as the name gives away, it can help universities select the right applicants for medical courses, biomedical, dental and veterinary degrees. So as I've talked about the areas we assess, so this one it has elements of thinking skills, it assesses thinking skills, it looks at the application of scientific knowledge, and there's also a section looking at written communication skills. I think this is a range of skills that are really important in these healthcare professions, thinking about not just the science, but the problem solving and the communication aspects. And BMAT's been around since 2003, and it was actually developed in liaison with universities in Cambridge. So it came about, Oxford and Cambridge used to have their own separate admissions tests, and they wanted to create a joint test along with some other universities like University College London to have something that could be used for application to a range of universities. So it was really absolutely developed with the university medical faculties, and these institutions have continued to use it, but now it's accepted by 37 universities worldwide. We have, in Southeast Asia, across Europe, we've got a medical school in Russia using this, which I'll tell you a bit more about. So it really is a very international test now. So I'm just going to tell you a bit, sort of through talking about BMAT, I'll sort of tell a bit more about admissions tests in general. So how does using an admissions test make these admissions decisions easier? So one of the sort of prime objectives of BMAT was to differentiate between applicants with the highest prior attainment. For courses like medicine, the applicants are all really very strong. Typically, it's quite difficult to distinguish between, the applicants who is the strongest, who is less strong, in a meaningful way. They may have very similar scores, or depending on the grading system for school qualifications. In the UK, we often find that they've got the same because we have grades rather than. So it's really there to kind of help differentiate between those applicants in a meaningful way when they're all very strong in terms of their school grades. The BMAT also helps ensure that applicants' scientific understanding is adequate and they can cope with the demands of a rigorous science-based course. And it provides a common measure for comparing applicants from a variety of educational backgrounds. So if you've got applicants from different countries, or if you've got applicants coming straight from school, or people coming from, after they've already had one career, coming to study medicine, so it can, or using different school qualifications, then this provides one piece of information which allows you to make a direct comparison between those different groups of applicants. And it allows admissions staff to focus resources on applicants with a realistic chance of receiving an offer. So this depends a bit on the system for admission to courses, but if you have a system where you do interviews or a multi-stage process for admitting, it can be used as a way to cut down the number of applicants that progress to that interview or to the next stage where you have a closer look at them. And it really increases the transparency of the admissions process to have a standardized test in there. So what I wanted to say before, this looks a bit complicated, but this was just to talk about how BMAT really helps you differentiate between students that look the same on paper. So if you look at the graphs, particularly labelled Section 1 Thinking Skills and Section 2 Scientific Knowledge and Applications, you'll see that these graphs here, you don't need to know the detail, but it's just this shows you a representation of the sort of distribution of scores that the students receive on BMAT. And you'll see that unlike, people would know that if you're selecting applicants for medical courses, you'll typically see school grades all at the top end. You'll see students with all of the highest marks applying. Whereas here, you can see that the marks are spread out throughout a range, which really helps you differentiate between the students and understand who the very top ones are. So now to just go into a quick case study here. So I talked a bit about how BMAT's typically used in terms of this, as part of the selection decision, as part of cutting down the numbers for interviews. But here I've got a bit of a case study from Pirogov National, so I've got the Medical Research University. And what they do here is they use BMAT as part of the selection process for their prestigious double degree programs. So they use it to select the strongest students who will have the best chance of succeeding on these challenging English medium programs which they have that are jointly run with Italian universities. So their process is that they run their admissions process and admit students onto the medical courses. But once the students are there, they offer the chance to take BMAT and for these students to gain a place on one of these highly sought after programs. And so this allows them to really identify the students who will do well studying in a program in English. And it really helps the admissions tutors to understand how these students are going to perform in compared to international students. They have a sort of, BMAT is an international reference point for them. And what I've got a quote here from the Dean of the International Medical School. The bit that she really likes is the focus on the critical thinking and the problem solving, because she feels that that really adds a really important extra dimension on top of the information that she gets from the university, the school, the exams that are taken after school. And it really can help give insight into the students who are going to do well. Students who can pick apart things, who can interpret things, who understand, can detect errors in reasoning, or who can understand flaws in arguments. And she says that she, knows that if students show good results in BMAT, that they'll be okay with this really, this challenging program, and that they'll show the university and program from the best side when they're on their exchange courses. Okay, just Quickly about the other assessments, I won't go into as much detail. So we also have our thinking skills assessment, and this just really focuses on the thinking skills aspect. It works in a similar way and would be used for the same purposes, but it's looks just at the critical thinking and problem solving skills, and this assessment has been around since 2001. So as I said, problem solving is the reasoning using numerical skills, things like identifying similarities, finding procedures for solving problems, or finding the relevant information in a larger set of information and applying it to the question. Or there's the critical thinking, reasoning using everyday language, which does things like people have to identify flaws in arguments, identify assumptions, detect reasoning areas, matching principles. So it really gets into those very useful skills that could cut across a wide range of degrees. So people use it for economics, geography, psychology, business programs. So it's really useful, and in a lot of the same ways I described for BMAT. So when students are preparing for these admissions tests, I talked before about our focus on widening participation, making sure these tests do not present barriers. So our assessments are designed so that students can prepare on their own, and we provide all the preparation materials for free. They don't need to pay for course books, they don't need to pay for any preparation courses. And where we include subject knowledge, we try and draw on knowledge that students will already have, so they don't have to spend a lot of time learning new things. And one of our key principles is that any preparation for these tests should have a positive impact, because students will be practicing skills that will be useful in their education. So whether or not after they've taken the admissions test they get into the university they needed to take it for, it's been a beneficial thing for them to do in terms of the practice. Okay, finally, I just wanted to move on to the Cambridge Personal Styles Questionnaire. So this is the assessment of attitudes and behaviours. And as I said, the rationale behind this is that we know that what students actually do is important as what they know. And this is an online assessment that provides this insight into their attitudes and behaviours, and it focuses on key areas such as thinking, study, coping, communication and collaboration, which are really going to influence how their success in their academic studies and their well-being in academic studies, which is really important at the moment. In a higher education context, we can use this either for student selection or as part of student development programs. And this test was, been through a really rigorous development and trialing process involving 4,000 students. I should just say I'm talking about CPSQ for higher education here, but we also offer this test for schools and teachers. So anyone who's got an interest in those audiences too. Now, I'll just share one example with you of a case study of how this assessment is used at Imperial College London in the UK. So CPSQ is used in the first year of a mechanical engineering course. So the tutors on that course found that they had students who are, of course, very academically gifted because it's a very prestigious course and university, but sometimes when they got to their first year exams, they weren't performing as well as they expected, and they wanted to help understand why and help the students understand why. So now they're taking CPSQ alongside these exams, and they are using it to help students understand this aspect of, their behaviours and their attitudes, and what they do is as important as their subject knowledge. And they did a little bit of analysis looking at CPSQ results and academic results, and they found out that what we call the study competency, which is linked to conscientiousness. So these students who are high in this area, tend to do better on the course. They found a strong link between students who scored well in this area and on-course performance. And they say this indicates that these traits can be just as important as previous academic achievement, if not more so, in predicting on-course performance. So they use it to help students reflect on their behavior, and students go away after taking CPSQ and work on their own personal development plans. They provide an introduction and, you know, ask the students to go away and put in place action plans to work on their areas in need of improvement. Just to say that, you know, we work very, as an organisation, we work very collaboratively with universities. So when universities are introducing admissions tests, we offer consultation and advice. We tend to collaborate on ongoing research, and we have marketing and sort of help desk support that people can access. So just to summarise, admissions tests are used to predicting success, to understand which applicants are going to do well on the courses. They're used for fairness and transparency. It's, you know, our tests are designed to be fair to all groups of students, and they provide a transparent way of comparing, especially where it's the only piece of information you have for all of the applicants. Our tests can be taken internationally, all around the world, allowing you to access, if you're recruiting internationally, to access students in the market. They help discover students with the right skills, like those critical thinking and problem-solving skills that you might not, you know, be able to identify from existing exam results. And in areas where you have large number of applicants and you need to find a way to filter them down to understand potential, it can really help in that situation. Okay, I realise we've run out of time, but there's my email address and our website, and if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer any now. Right, let's look at the questions. Okay, is it possible to see a sample paper for BMAT or TSA? If you, yeah, we've got sample papers on our website. So if you go to admissionstesting.org, and then there's information for candidates, test takers, you'll be able to find a lot of sample papers in there. Okay, there's another question. How do you differentiate cognitive and non-cognitive attitude behavior of a person? Can an individual act in any way without using his or her mind? What are the criteria test programs used to measure thinking skills? Right, I think that question's, I'm just trying to, that's quite a complex question, and I'm not sure I'm the best qualified person to answer that. I mean, cognitive I mean, people obviously do tend to behave in certain ways. People can change, you know, the ways, so they can, you know, if they have a behavioral preference to act in a certain way, they can, you know, behave, they can actively take on a different way of behaving and understand that they need to be confident and they need to, you know, act a certain way. But I think CPSQ can help them understand their behavioral preferences and help them on areas for improvement, so to help them, you know, adapt their behavior and to understand how they could, you know, sort of behave in different ways to make that part of the ways they do things. Okay. I think that's covered most of the questions. Great.
Thank you very much, Yvette. I cannot see any questions. I just see lots of thank yous, lots of work for your presentation. Thank you very much for sharing this information with us. I'm sure that this information is really important. I see that lots of people have some interest in it, so we will share all the links and useful materials in our follow-up email. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you for such an interesting presentation. It was really informative. Yes, I agree. I agree, dear colleagues. That was really great. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope see you next time. We are organizing lots of events here.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Dear colleagues, So thank you very much for joining us today for this conference. That was really great. I believe that all sessions were very, very useful. So we gave very detailed overview of our products, LinguaSkill, EMI, admissions tests. So there were fantastic sessions by our colleagues from Cambridge University Press, and of course plenary sessions by colleagues from research and validation team, Cambridge Assessment English, and very, very interactive webinar by Claire Barnes about developing writing skills at B2 and C1 level. I would like to remind you about our contest. This contest is for universities from Russia, Armenia, and Belarus. I know that there are participants from other countries, but this contest is only for 3 countries, I'm sorry. The contest is called Give Your Students a Boost with LinguaSkill from Cambridge. Today, Ian Colley delivered a wonderful session about LinguaSkill, and I hope it gave you some understanding of the test. This is an AI-powered test by Cambridge Assessment English, and we announce this contest competition. It will start tomorrow. What you need to do to take part in it: write a motivational letter and explain how your university, your students, will benefit from LinguaSkill. In the chat, there is a link to the website. There you can find banners, and when you click on them, you can download, read instructions, terms and conditions of participation. The winners will get free LinguaSkill tests. So I think that this is a great opportunity for everybody. Thank you very much. The recording of this webinar will be added to our YouTube channel, Cambridge Assessment English Russia, and it will be added to our follow-up email. Your certificates of attendance will be shared with you within 1 week. So please, there will be an email from us. Yes, thank you very much for your comments. So enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much for joining us, and goodbye. Thank you very much for all your warm words.
Innovative, fast, flexible, convenient. LinguaSkill is the accurate English test with fast results, developed by Cambridge Assessment English, part of the University of Cambridge. Whether you are an education institution or employer, you can use LinguaSkill to measure the English language level of candidates or employees. There are 2 versions of the test available, General and Business, both covering all 4 language skills: speaking, writing, listening, and reading. And you can choose which of these skills you want to test. LinguaSkill has been trialled by speakers of over 40 languages from 50 countries, making LinguaSkill accurate and reliable. And with individual and group reports generated within 48 hours, it's fast too. Results are aligned to international standards, allowing you to make informed decisions and compare performance. Online and using artificial intelligence technology, LinguaSkill allows you to run and invigilate the test at your own site at any time. Find out how you can simplify your English language testing at cambridgeenglish.org/LinguaSkill. LinguaSkill. Innovative, fast, flexible, convenient.